Young men speaking in the city square, trying to tell somebody that he cares. Can you blame the voice of youth for asking what is true? Yeah, the ones that you're calling wild are gonna be the leaders in a little while, when will the lonely voice of youth cry what is true? This our world's waking to a newborn babe, and I solemnly swear it'll be their way. You better help that voice of youth find what is true. And the lonely voice of youth cries, what is true?
All right. Welcome, everybody. Here we are for another Pirate live stream. We've got upgrades, just like the second Matrix movie. Upgrades. I hope you like the upgrades. Not really permanent upgrades yet, but we're working on it. Definitely need the flag to represent. So now we have the pirate flag. Very good stuff. We've got our Sampal, of course. I hope you have your Sampal too. It's good stuff. We've got our Muppet Cup, right? Have you considered? Have you? Should consider. And of course, we've got some tea from Table Rock Tea Company. This is Westminster tea. It's quite good. It smells delicious. Oh, yeah. It's very rich. Very rich tea. Yeah, man, it's been a hell of a week. Quite the ride. We're still sort of in the chaos, and the chaos is kind of everywhere now, and it's all conspiracy in the age of gnosis, right? Where knowledge is propositions, and that's the highest value. Whatever propositions you have. And you can see sort of these flat worlds colliding with one another, right? Politics is getting in the way of economics, and the climate people are getting in the way of politics, and like all these flat worlds, these little flat pseudo religions or cults or however you want to think of them. It doesn't really matter. You can really see people being flat and thinking flatly rather clearly now. And that's been going on for a while. And I think people kind of miss it, right? You might refer to people as NPCs. Well, that's a flat world designation. Or you go further back, although it's not necessarily further back, and call them ideologically possessed. Also a flat world designation. I think the best way to think about them, though, and this sort of comes out in Jonathan Peugeot and John Vervaeke, they're zombies. They're zombies. They're constantly seeking brains. Brains contain the propositions that is the highest value. Zombies don't think life is a high value. They don't seek babies. They just seek knowledge by eating brains. Very flat world. And the thing is, the chaos zombies are here because zombies cause chaos, and chaos causes zombies. People get overwhelmed cognitively, can't function anymore. They turn into zombies when they weren't before. It's not some virus that spreads the human population, unless you want to count Richard Dawkins' memes as viri. Get hit with enough memes, your brain blows up, and you're a zombie. Right? Try to understand the world through memes, you're going to flatten the world. And one theme that sort of came up earlier today on a call that I do on Friday morning sometimes. this idea of supply chains and the pagers, right? So these pagers are blowing up. People are scared about what's going on, and then they realize they can't track who sort of controls the pagers. And that's because there's a long supply chain, right? In order to make a pager, you've probably got to involve at least half a dozen companies, maybe more. And that's just to build the damn thing. And once it's built, you've got to involve more companies to sell it, right? You need a sales channel. There might only be one other company, but usually it's not. There's a shipping company involved somewhere, right? At least one. These supply chains are long. Those things could have been compromised at any number of points in that supply chain. And the more technological you get, the longer your supply chains are. And so effectively, the less control you have. And the more influence other people have, influence that you can't calculate because you can't see it. Like, who shipped your stuff from China to you? Who shipped your stuff across the USA to you? You know every person in that chain of custody for your package? No. And you probably never will. And maybe you can find out later, but then it's too late. Like, people are like, "Oh, we could find out." But it's already too late. So I don't know why you care at that point. It's already done. It's good to know. And another pattern that I'm seeing sort of this week is, people are focusing on the personal relationship, right? Over relationship as such. Because, like, you can have a personal relationship, but you can't have only one. Uh, or privileging the personal relationship in particular, over goodness. Like, what's good? Like, I get that we have a relationship, but, like, is it good? Because that seems important. Just focusing on relationship doesn't get you to the true, the good, and the beautiful. So you can't reduce it down to relationship or relationships. And we often confuse the general for the specific and the specific for the general when we're talking about relationship. We go, "Oh, you can't say that because you'll hurt that person's feelings." And it's like, well, A, what if it's true? So you're going to throw the truth out because one person is upset or might be upset? Is being upset bad for you? Because what if being upset is what you need to grow and change and learn? Therein lies the rub. What if not telling the truth in front of somebody else whose feelings it won't hurt is more important than the other person's feelings being hurt? Oh, we didn't think about that because we always just boil it down to one relationship. Don't do that. That's a mistake, right? And it's weird too because the materialists are making very, very odd claims. Like, well, that wasn't directed at you. They could have been talking about any number of people. Okay. But if they said a bad thing, why is that better? Oh, they weren't making fun of one person. They were making fun of five people. Well, that's worse, guy. That's not better. Like, you didn't make your case. You made the crime bigger. And probably the crime was bigger than just one person. But if no one stands up, the crime goes unpunished and unnoticed. And that's not good for anyone. It's not good for anyone. And that blocks being better. Like, relationships, you need to make them better on the whole. And it may mean sacrificing one or two to improve three or four. I don't make the rules, man. It's just the way things are. Once you add more than one relationship to the world you live in, conflict arises at the layer of relationship. It's the way it is. And the ethos becomes comfort because you're focused on relationship. But comfort's always a flat world, right? You cannot track relationships, plural, as relationship, singular, and you can't grab, we'll say, the sum of all of your individual relationships and understand relationships as such at the plural layer. Can't say this relationship with this person and that relationship with that person, and therefore this is what relationships are like, because they're not. They're at a different scale. Everything changes. And then you default that, right, as a problem to solve. You're like, oh, this person right now is making fun of this other person or calling this other person out for their horrible behavior because they're a horrible person. That might be more important, by the way. And then you want to solve it because you're privileging the single relationship that you see over all of the relationships. That's why we can't have nice things. That's actually why, right? That's one thing all by itself that will prevent us from ever having nice things, ever building anything ever. Don't do that. Accept the ugly truth of the fallen world. We don't live in a perfect world. We're not going to live in a perfect world. We're not perfect people. They're not perfect people. But that shouldn't stop us from making things better. And that requires breaking a few eggs to make an omelet. It's sort of one pattern that arises out of this comfort is the attraction of demons. Demons like comfort. You make a safe space, a place for comfort. The demons are coming too, man. And especially if your safe space is advertised as a safe space for everyone. Don't do that. The demons will show up. Now you've got demons. Your space isn't so safe. And when those who need rest go to this comfort, right, they can get attacked by these demons. And that's not always obvious because spaces that are not kept sacred, which takes a lot of work and responsibility, cannot remain comfortable for long. Because eventually enough people will come there and they will start disagreeing, and there will be an issue, and there will be snakes, and they will bite. And then there's an additional problem in that when people are in multiple spaces, or John Vervaeke calls them arenas, then you go to a comfortable space and end up dragging a demon into a different space. That happens. Might have happened this week. That happens. So comfort is like honey to the demons and the bad people with bad behavior and everything else. And if you're not in there mitigating that, or better yet, filtering them out so they don't come in, then they'll jump because they follow people from space to space to people follow other people from space to space to space. Right? Don't drag the demons that you attack into other spheres. Like, don't do that. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Like, that's not good. It's actually rather horrific, and shame on you. And just seeing these problems in the world, like, you start out with a nice political party and you get crazy ideologue zombies attacking everybody in the space because they're not on board with their crazy ideology. But they thought they were all along. They thought, oh, these are my people. And then they find out they're not their people. And then the demon manifests. Yeah. So I'm talking about comfort and safety. What is it that we're on about here? Because when people pursue comfort, they flatten the world. They're the same thing. The world is not comfortable. It never was, and it never will be. Sorry. That opens people up to enchantment. Negative enchantment, mostly. You get them comfortable, they relax, they start to trust you because there's no threats, right? And maybe you don't do it, but maybe somebody else in the space comes along and enchants them. And they can't see this because they don't have eyes to see. They don't see it coming. It just happens. They don't understand enchantment. Although maybe if you watch all of my videos on enchantment, that flat comfort space, that flat, safe zone, that safe space, that's devoid of enchantment. It's a disenchanted world. Doesn't reflect the reality you're in. Sorry. Maybe don't do that. All flat worlds are comfortable because they're understandable, they are predictable, and one or more aspects are equal. Economics. My dollar and your dollar buy the same stuff. That's mostly true. That's how they do all their calculations, too, by the way. And it's not true. The value of a dollar varies greatly from region to region, even in the US. Oops. That lunch from that chain restaurant isn't the same price in town as it is 3 miles down the road. Oops. And you can kind of get around this with some fancy statistics, maybe, or maybe you're just missing a bunch of stuff and you squish the world. It's a nice flat world. Everything's equal, or at least what you want to be equal, so you can rule it out as having to calculate it anymore. A bunch of otherwise undefinable terms become perfectly easy to define in a flat world. Flat worlds don't contain the true, the good, and the beautiful. They don't account for it. They're not supposed to. Also, those are the only things you should account for, and everything else you don't need to account for, but whatever, we'll set that aside. It's comfortable, it's a safe space. You don't need to worry about if you're doing the right thing, because there's no right thing to worry about. Yay, not. Flat worlds have peace, equality, and efficiency right at your fingertips. And this seems to be good. It seems like those things lead to goodness. But it's false. It's a projection. It's a two-dimensional projection of a four-dimensional space, not a three-dimensional space, my friends, a four-dimensional space. And the thing is, your illusion in the flat world can last longer than you can even imagine. In the video game Error, because it's not really an era, we're used to instant feedback on results of our actions. We know exactly what's going to happen ahead of time. We know how to get what we want. It's pretty clear. And you see this in software engineering. You see, oh, if I just write the code that does this, it's like, well, there's a lot of this in the just write the code part. A lot. And you see it elsewhere. You see this video game like engagement with almost every bureaucratic function now. They just tell you, go here, fill out this form, put this form in, and then you'll get this. It was never like that before. Everything was mediated by a person. Whether or not you got something was up to the person. Sometimes this goes horribly wrong because the person is prejudiced. All people are prejudiced, including you, my friend. Get over it. Sometimes it goes horribly right because the person is prejudiced and they can make a discernment between getting this person the thing and not getting this person the thing. Pluses and minuses. It's almost as if we live in a fallen world. Or something. Comfort is a space where discernment is already done. Judgment is no longer required, and all actions are safe. And that seems good. It seems easy and comfortable. Seems like that's the way everything should be. But comfort is also a type of sleep, and sleep is where you dream. And if you get comfortable, you will fall asleep because there's nothing compelling you to do anything in the world. So sleep is a real danger in a safe space. It's a real danger in a comfort zone. It's a real danger of comfort. And if you sleep and you slip into a dream, will you know it? Will you? And if you stay too long in your dream, you can get lost there. You can get lost in your dreams. And then you're trying to live out something in your head that doesn't correspond to the things outside of your head anymore. You have to do a little bit of that, but if you do too much of it, you're too far away, and then nothing gets done. Dreams are not optional. You have to dream, but they're also not the whole story. They don't encompass all of participation. Don't try to live in a complete and completely detached story, because that's what dreams can turn into if you let them go on too long. Don't think people account for that. Their dreams are dangerous because the purpose of dreams is to steer you away from danger. And if you don't get the message for whatever reason, your dreams will eat you. And this happens to people all the time. Dreams are perfectly safe. They're perfectly comfortable. People are held comfortable and safe all the way to hell. Are you comfortable? Do you seek safety? Good luck. The worst part, perhaps, about so called safe spaces and comfort is that you never make mistakes, or worse yet, you are protected from the results of your mistakes. You might also think about that as consequences. And it might also be costs. Those are different, by the way. Certain things have a cost, even when they don't have consequences. And when that happens, you get a flat world because you're comfortable. Then you think the whole world is flat. Try to use that flat world, which is a map, to map the not flat world, the enchanted world, the four-dimensional, self-similar fractal realm in which we operate, in which we exist, in which we are beings, persons connected to other persons. Not one other person, multiple persons. You can't make everybody happy. And more importantly, mistakes, feedback, consequences, costs, constraint, that's how you learn. If you don't have constraint, costs, and consequences, you cannot technically learn anything at all. Never going to happen. So pick one. You want reality? If you are comfortable, you aren't anywhere near it. Sorry. You don't have to stay anxious and running around the whole time. You have to rest. You need to seek comfort. You just can't stay there very long, nor should you need to. There's no reason to do that. A theme that you'll probably see, if you haven't noticed it already, is this idea around discovering the divine feminine. Very big topic. Mature Peugeot did a wonderful talk with Dan Shervin about this. Kind of, uh, it's big in the symbolic world sphere. Obviously, other people have been talking about it for a while. This theme's been going along for longer than you think. People talk about wisdom. Wisdom is depicted as a woman. Huh. People want to save the earth. The earth is female. Huh. There's a deep sense that we need safety. Mommy keeps you safe. The comfort zone that mommy provides is a healing zone, but it's not a growth zone. It doesn't allow for growth. It doesn't allow for healthy mistakes. It doesn't do that. There is a middle state, and you need to advance from the middle state. That isn't just motion or progress or some abstract 5-cent Harvard word or some vicious malignment of Greek because someone tried to translate a Greek word into a single English word, which should probably be a crime punishable by death. That isn't how Greek works, not ancient Greek anyway. Motion doesn't tell you much because it could make you worse. The world could get more comfortable and more flat, and you could still be moving. You can move when you're comfortable. Motion is a great deceiver. All movement isn't good. Most movement is actually bad. Do not get enchanted by a movement or a sense of movement, especially when you're not moving, because that could be bad, especially movement in a comfortable space. The same with intelligibility. I went online, listened to a YouTube channel. They're having a debate, which they probably weren't, by the way. They just called it a debate and you fell for it. It seems like movement for your brain, like you've learned something because you, quote, heard both sides, as though that's some magical solve that does something in the world. Hint, it does not. It feels like you're progressing because now you have more information. You might call that knowledge, it's not, than you had before. But are you progressing? Or did you just stuff your brain with more useless information that you're never going to use in your life? I don't know. But you should consider that. Is Hegel applicable anywhere ever? No. No, it's not. Sorry, it's not. Like, it's not ever going to be. Kant? No, not applicable to anything ever. Sorry, it's not. Who cares? Right? You're creating a comfortable, safe space in academia land so that you can pretty much mentally jerk off. That's what's going on there. It doesn't have to be that way. Ideas can be discussed among peers, fruitfully sometimes, but most people can't engage in that at all. And we've told them they can, and we've given them access to that. We flooded them with that information. Flooded them. The internet is a flood of information. It's a flood of facts. It's a flood of details. It's a flood of cat memes. It's a flood. How is that better? Hint, it's not better, but it's definitely several orders of magnitude worse. Sorry. You flood yourself with propositions. You flood yourself with clever ways of slicing up propositions and putting them back together and redefining dialectic because you think you're smarter than freaking Plato for some reason, which you're definitely not, by the way. Uh, and suddenly, bang, you feel like you've moved, like you've made progress, and it feels comfortable and safe because no one got hurt. After all, they're just ideas. But as we've seen, words are violence. What? Now you're hurting people just by talking on the internet to people you don't even know. Obviously, that's not going to work. Like, that can't hold. Like, no. The internet is comfortable. You can click off at any time. If it bothers you that somewhere out there someone's saying something mean, you're the problem. No, you're the actual problem. No, really, you are the problem. Right? Just don't engage with the quote mean people. Most of those people who do that, by the way, live alone and don't have any friends. That might be a hint as to the utility of that way of thinking about the world. Maybe the things you think of as mean are not optional, are not mean, and are just things that you don't like. And I don't care about your stupid opinion. So get bent. That wasn't hard. Was that hard? Didn't seem hard. But intelligibility in particular seems like movement in your brain. And the problem is it's not. And I don't mean it's not necessarily, I mean it's not ever. The fact that something is intelligible is in and of itself meaningless. You can connect the tea in China, the price of tea in China, to a bunch of things. That's intelligible technically. That's the trick people play all the time. Look at this correlation. And a lot of times it's just, well, that thing had to go up with this other thing. And a lot of times it's just, well, things go up. Who cares? Because intelligibility is something we impose on the world. It's not a feature of the world as such. So it's kind of important what's intelligible, how it's intelligible, and more importantly, why it's intelligible. It's perfectly intelligible that a bunch of pagers blew up. Well, yeah, I can make total sense out of that. I can blame any number of parties for that. I can make up intelligible stories about why the US had to know about it or why there's no way the US could have known about it. They're equally plausible and they're both intelligible. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. We can find intelligibility all over we see faces in clouds, dude. If seeing a dragon in a cloud or a face in a cloud is not a statement of intelligibility, I don't know what your definition is, but it's wrong. But faces in clouds might be intelligible, but they don't necessarily have any meaning. What are you doing? You're squishing the world. Intelligibility, who cares? The end of the day, safety is the evil you should avoid. You cannot be safe unless you are controlled and a bunch of things around you are done by others. That's the only way you can be safe. Period. End of statement. You will have less agency in the world if you are safe. Every time you are safe, have less agency. Sometimes you need to be safe. Just don't do that too much. 6 days of work, 1 day of rest, maybe? I don't know. Yeah, maybe two. What the hell? Seems like a good rule of thumb. A day of rest, a day of comfort. Sure, that sounds fair. Comfort all the time? Comfort while working? Or just comfort while at work? What are you, high? No. There's a bunch of things being done by others to provide that safety for you. And you are then under their control and influence, whether you like it or not. And you made that trade off, whether you realize it or not. This is not optional. This is how safety actually works. This is how comfort actually works. You want comfort? A bunch of people have to go out of their way to provide that. You are beholden to them now, whether you realize it or not. You don't have to realize it. You keep your head in the sand. I don't care. Like, it's no skin off my nose. I know how this works. If you're fooled by this, I mean, good luck. I don't know. I ain't going to do nothing about it. You chose it. I don't think you should choose it. Beware of safety. Maybe it's 6 days of work to prepare 1 day of rest. I don't know. Then you're the one that controls the day of rest, the safety, not relying on other people. If you want that optimal environment where you're not relying on other people, go build a cabin in the woods, bro. Seriously, go do it. Hunt your own food and the whole nine. You can do that. You can. Anybody can do that. Or at least they can learn to do that somehow, train themselves up. That's possible. You're not doing that, are you? No, you get your freaking fancy internet and your electricity and your heating and cooling system and all this other stuff. That comfort comes at a cost, and you're paying it. If you don't understand that, you're in a lot of trouble, or at least you will be at a random point in time. You'll get enchanted, you'll get captured, all of that. That's how safety works. It's not a problem to be fixed. It's a trade-off in the world as the result of having been born in a creation. It's not a thing that you have any say in, that you have any control over. You want comfort, you want safety, there's a cost. Pay the cost. There's a risk too. Oh, anything with a cost, anything with a consequence also comes with a risk. Paid the cost last time, didn't have a consequence, try it again. Whoops, might have a consequence this time. It's the way the world is. It's imperfect. You cannot be safe and learn. Cannot be comfortable and learn. You will not learn in a comfortable environment. Sorry. You might think you do because there's movement in your head, like there's more facts or information or whatever. You cannot be safe and grow. Cannot be comfortable and grow. There's no growth in comfort. Gardeners know this. You stress the plant out a little, or it won't grow as well. You cannot be safe and build. You want nice stuff? You want to keep the nice stuff you have? You can't be safe. You've got to shimmy up that electric line and fix it, or at least someone does. If that's not you, well, you're beholden to them. You can only be safe and comfortable while being controlled by others because they've set the frame. They define the safety. And if they don't define it clearly, ooh, watch out for demons. If they don't hold the space, if they're not responsible for the space, if they're not managing the space, good luck. And the problem is, you might be too weak to get out of your comfort, to get out of your safety. You might be. You might have been weakened by staying in the comfort too long, right? It's possible. Who knows? But then you're a pawn. You're an NPC. You're a LARPer. But not everyone is. Well, that's weird. What is the difference? Comfort, safety. Figure it out. Discern. It's important. All right. That's it for that. I'm working on a video. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going up to New England for a bit and see a concert with my uncle, and I'm flying right back. Pretty much, I'm only like on Saturday to Tuesday, so I'll be back here on Tuesday night. I did record a video. It's possible my editor gets it done by Tuesday, so it'll be released on Wednesday. It is a commentary video due to a request on navigating patterns. Somebody wanted to sort out the Jonathan Peugeot, John Vervaeke, Jordan Hall talk. I am 23 minutes in. I didn't watch it first. I just jumped in and did the commentary because I can get away with that with John's work. Wow. Yeah, I think that's all I got right now. Wow. The number of mistakes, the number of logical inconsistencies and errors, the number of crazy language pieces is impressive. That should be out on Wednesday with any luck, but I can't promise that because I don't control my channel. I wish I could, but even if I did, I wouldn't have time to edit it because I'm going to be traveling. I'm not taking a laptop or anything crazy. So look for that. I did the smallest amount of work on the Matrix stuff. Also, we're trying to start up a new thing on the Market Wisdom Discord server around movies and movie interpretation along the lines of Jordan Peterson's Pinocchio and Lion King stuff. So we want to try and do some of that with some other movies. I don't know how successful that'll be. I don't know if we'll get it off the ground, but if you're interested in that, join the Market Wisdom Discord. There's a channel for it somewhere. I don't know where. You keep track of all this stuff. There's no Language Creation Book Club because I'm flying tomorrow. Manuel's at a wedding. And I think even Gustav's is not available. So we had to cancel that. But we'll resume next week. We'll pick it up where we left off. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of all the news that's fit to print. Things are not comfortable here because I'm bouncing around. And it's been a long week and I'm pretty tired. But look, if you want to hop in, I'm going to post the link. Feel free to hop in and ask me any questions about comfort and safety. And maybe we can get into other sorts of things if that is interesting to you. I don't like to keep it too, we'll say, personal because that can get crazy, especially with this crew. Especially now that invasions have happened already. It's really annoying being connected to groups that attract demons on a regular basis and don't think they do. Because they love everybody. It's hippie Jesus, guys. Everyone's our friend. We don't care if they're mentally ill. We don't care at all. We don't even know what mentally ill people are. And we just accuse everybody else of randomly calling people mentally ill. When if we took 2 seconds to look, we'd realize that was true. Or if we talked to them for 10 minutes and they said, oh, I'm mentally ill, that might be a hint too. So, yeah, I mean, just craziness, absolute craziness, level of irresponsibility, and people pretending like, well, this isn't new. We don't know how to communicate in this news. The internet's not new. Online's not new. YouTube's not new. None of this is new. Zero of this is new. And you can actually just apply the same rules from every other sphere to the internet and they work. And you know what other things work? None. Weird, huh? It's almost like human relations. Human relations in the medium doesn't quite matter so much. Maybe it limits you. But the baseline, things like politeness, they don't go away and they can't be improved upon. Not by you anyway, because you're a Muppet. The fact of being a Muppet. Like, I don't know what to tell you there. Have you considered? But yeah, I mean, levels of irresponsibility and just total disconnectedness from what's going on around them. And I'm like, what is going on? Why is everything like this? You know, there's no reason for this. This is just people being irresponsible left, right, and center. Because if they were responsible, they'd have to admit to themselves that they're incompetent, useless fools. because they refuse to be useful, not because they can't be useful, because they refuse to put to use what they have. They all want to be Elon Musk. Well, you're not Elon Musk. You know who's Elon Musk? Elon Musk. You know who else is Elon Musk? No one. Like, this isn't that hard. Like, we're not all equal. And even if we were, you're not Elon Musk. Get over it. Like, it's like pick another thing, right? You're not Jordan Peterson. You're not John Vervaeke, thank goodness. You're not Jordan Hall, thank goodness. You're not Jonathan Peugeot. You're not an artist. You can't will yourself to be an artist. I'm going to be an artist. No. Being an artist means being possessed by a muse that forces you to art, despite the fact that it's not good for your health or your survival or anyone around you's survival. Jonathan Peugeot did a beautiful job of that, by the way. See the Symbolic World recap that we did. Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Peugeot, like, don't be an artist. Don't be an artist. No, really, don't be an artist. He said it like half a dozen times. It was brilliant. Really appreciated that. Yeah, don't be an artist. And you can't just will yourself to be an artist. Like, you really can't. Like first of all, there's lots of things you're just not good at. In fact, you're not good at most things. You're probably not even good at the things you've been told you're good at. There's a brilliant interview I saw with Simon Cowell years ago. They were like, "Why are you so mean, bro?" And he's like, "Listen, some of these people are spending all of their free time trying to sing. And the bottom line is they've hit the top end of their singing and they're just not good enough to go any further. And as far as they are, they're not good enough to be stars. And if you don't tell them that, they're going to waste their lives trying to be a star when they can't do it. They've topped out. You have a max point. It's different from mine. Sorry. I can't sing at all. Like, I wouldn't mind being a rock star. I can't play guitar. I've tried for years. I've reliably told them I'm a bassist. I don't know what that means or how anybody would know that, but I believe them. Um, Tried to play keyboard, couldn't do it. Tried to play the recorder, couldn't do it. But still want to. I'd love to play Smoke on the Water. Dun, dum, 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 da-dum, and a bunch of Zeppelin riffs that I absolutely love. But it's not going to happen. Like, I can waste more time on it, I guess, or I can do something better. Right? Maybe something that I like less, we'll say. But, I mean, you don't know. Like, maybe you learn the guitar and then you find out you don't like playing the guitar because that happens. So, yeah, I mean, Ixnon, have you tried playing bass yet? No, sir, I have not. I found this out recently and bass is not on the list. Maybe someday. Yeah, I'm completely swamped with other things I need to get done before I start embarking on new dalliances of funness, we'll say. So no, I have not tried to play the bass yet, not once. And maybe I'd be amazing at it. I have no idea. But also, look, there's a bunch of stuff I am good at, right? I'm really good at organizing things. I'm really good at analysis. I'm really good at software. I'm really good at DevOps. I'm really good at networks and storage and things like that. I'm really good at technology in general, right? And I'm reasonably good at this. Apparently, I'm pretty good at the commentaries because those are going gangbusters. One commentary over 700 views. Thank you very much. So this is how I spend my time, right? And this is a lot to manage. And trying to pick up a bass guitar and learn to play it is a little bit much. So I'm probably not going to do that anytime soon. Maybe in the new year. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not, I mean, I like listening to music. I'm not sure at all I'd like playing music. I have no idea. I'm not, I'm not one of these starry-eyed people who thinks, yeah, I'll do this and it'll be amazing. I've been around on this earth too long to fall for that. A lot of the things I thought I'd like, and a lot of things I did like software engineering. I used to love writing software. And now they've changed all the tools and everything is fake and gay. And I hate software now. I absolutely despise it. Like, everything's a problem. Nothing is stable. You're using your code some retard updates a library unnecessarily, breaks your code. You don't even know about it because something's set that shouldn't be set, and everybody's using development environments that automatically grab code updates, which I can't think of a worse software practice if I try. Like, we never used to do that. We used to control all the updates on our code. My goodness. I worked for a company that had the source code from another company in their vault, in an actual vault, right? In case that other company went under. So they always had a copy of that code because it was a programming language that they used to write their software. That's how no change we were back in the day. You don't want it to change. You want things to be stable. You don't want to be constantly updating things. If you have to update your software, it was broken when you wrote it. What are you doing? You're a terrible software engineer. Sorry, bro, but like you are. You should write it right the first time. You shouldn't need like constant revisions. You know how many freaking updates this stupid thing gets? My goodness, I've got 100 apps, maybe 110 apps. It until 2 weeks ago was updating 20 apps every 2 days. I'm like, "What do you do?" And I didn't notice any change to anything. So I don't know what they're doing, but like, my goodness. Like, at some point, you're just like ginning up jobs to keep people busy. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I've written lots of software that's still running that like it did what it needed to do, and you don't need to change it. Like, I don't understand. Like, that's the advantage. Like, you do it once and it's totally reliable and repeatable. Like, that should be everything, right? In the old days, you used to buy one car, you keep it for 15 years. What happened to that? People buying new cars every 3 years now. And sometimes you have to because they break and it's not worth getting them fixed, which is even more puzzling. What do you mean it's not worth getting them fixed? In the old days, it was cheap to fix cars. It's still expensive to buy them, but not anymore. So, I mean, oh, why is the world chaotic? Well, that's one reason. And you can blame, quote, consumerism, but that's not a real thing. And blaming that won't help you. It won't lead you to a solution, or there's nothing to fix. If consumerism is true, there's nothing you can do about it. Just give up and like focus your attention on something you can fix or help or make better. We're not going to make better consumerism if consumerism is true anyway. So, right, like knowing the end result and knowing you can't do anything about it helps you know it's a frame that isn't helpful. True or not, like whatever. You make a truth case, I guess, for a frame. But if it's an unhelpful frame that you can do nothing about, who cares if it's true? It doesn't matter. It makes no difference. If the cost of tea in China correlates with the growth of the US Navy, which I'm pretty sure it actually does, well, so what? Like, what difference does it make? Reducing the cost of tea in China isn't going to reduce the US Navy. Like, what? I don't understand. Perfectly intelligible. It's just not helpful. And that's part of the problem is, pragmatism keeps you out of these problems. The beauty of pragmatism. And I know Monsieur Peugeot talked about this idea of the lock and the key. And he's like, well, we have the key, but now we're looking for the lock. But then some people are going to find the lock and abuse it. Well, that's already happening, but whatever. Yeah. But the way you know that the lock is right is that the key fits and turns and opens the lock. Right. And so there's a way in which the only way to know if the lock is correct is with the key. And the only way to know the key is correct is with the lock. If you can be sure about one of these things, you can go through a procedure to find the other one. People don't account for that because they want one answer. They want one flat map of the world for everything that just works. And you know what? You're never going to get that. You're never going to get that. Never going to get that. It was strange in the Peugeot Vervaeke Jordan Hall conversation. John is, talking about maps, and he's saying, look, you've got contour maps and you've got elevation maps and you've got political maps, right? And I was like, I get the feeling John's not going where he thinks he's going, which that feeling turned out to be true, right? He was basically talking about the need for different maps and that different maps exist because different goals exist, different purposes, different telos, final cause, right? And then he says, but we need a map for all those maps. There isn't such a thing. That doesn't even make any sense. Why are you talking like this? Like, this is crazy talk. Like, no, there isn't one map to rule them all, just like there isn't one ring to rule them all. Like, this isn't that hard. I don't understand why people get stuck on this. We want a map, one map that explains reality. And then they'll go, don't confuse the map for the territory. That wasn't a hint that you can't have one map for reality? Really? That didn't clue you in. The fact that you know that you say that didn't clue you in, that having a map doesn't tell you enough about reality to be useful. Sorry. Having a map might be useful for a telos, for a purpose. If you have a purpose, you might be able to do. And what is a map? They're not even thinking of these questions. It's just terrible. Because a map is a way of communicating relations using a set of rules based on a purpose. That's what it is, right? There's a purpose, there's a measure, there's a set of relations, and there's a set of rules that govern those relations. That's how you build a map. That's a lot of parts. You can build a lot of maps by moving those parts around. So, yeah. Ixnay, Protestantism for the lost. Yeah, well, they're a flat world, right? I mean, you need a hint for flat world? I mean, sola. Use the word sola or individual, or you talk about agent, singular, arena, singular, relationship, singular. Those are all flat worlds. You want to re-enchant that? There are no agents in a single arena, and there are no arenas with a single agent. Bingo. Fixed. Enchanted. Also, maybe the problem is that becomes combinatorially explosive, and maybe it does. That's not my fault. That's the way the world is. Suck it up, buttercup. Fixed. Right? There's no arenas with only one agent in them. That doesn't make any sense. And you can't be an agent in a single arena. That also does not make any sense. Right? Like, you can be a son and a brother. Right? At home, the arena, you have a mother and a father, hopefully, and maybe siblings. I mean, at work, is there only one person at work? Like, I don't understand. Where are you getting these agent arena relationship things when in every arena there's more than one agent and you have relationships with all of them and all of their relationships affect you because they affect the arena? Oops. I don't know what you think you solved, but you didn't. You squished the world, right? And then said, and therefore. But like that's not helpful and it's not good, more importantly, because it's a flat world. Sola, something alone. I don't know what universe everyone's living in, but like there's nothing alone. There's nothing by itself. What are you talking about? Where would that be? I mean, you'd be safe if you were alone, kind of, till a bear comes along and eats your face, because that happens. But like, there's no place you can be alone. Like, this is ridiculous, right? It's you and something else alone gives you the truth. It's impossible and it's ridiculous. And it's hard no. Like, sorry. You relate to the universe, to creation inside a story. Because you can't use a map or a mere model, because stories are not models either. That would be the scientific move. Well, there's maps and there's models. It's like, well, all models are wrong and some models are useful, just like maps, by the way. Now what? Oh, you didn't solve a problem, did you? Oops. Bummer. But it felt safe because flat worlds are safe. If it's just agent arena relationship, that's safe. Like you can figure out a way to feel comfortable there. but you're never going to be there. It's never a condition that you're in. And you can make yourself think that, like, oh, I'll meditate. It's like, well, yeah, okay. The odds that meditation will make you worse and not better are fairly high. It can make you better, especially if it's guided, if you have a mentor or whatever. Better if you're in a group, right? If you do a group meditation with a bunch of other people and talk about it afterwards, as we used to do on the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis Discord server, can be very beneficial, right? But the Sam Harris meditate by yourself nonsense, nah, you're going to double down. You're going to want to be safe. You're going to get off X because the mean people are there and all the people you meditate with are safe and comfortable. You never push back on your stupid ideas that are bankrupt and bereft of all thought. I mean, he said as much in this interview with Peterson. I was kind of shocked. I'm like, I don't know. Some of these guys, I, I get it. Like, honesty is good, but also there's certain things you don't admit to in public. And Sam doesn't seem to know that. But what do you want to do? Like, I'm okay with it. Ixnay, all models are abstractions and all abstractions are subtractions. I don't think they're all subtractions, but I think this is where John Vervaeke's work is actually useful, right? So he was talking to Mark Lewis. Mark Lewis talked about addiction as reciprocally narrowing, and John goes, well, if there's reciprocal narrowing, there must be a reciprocal opening. Yeah, probably. And certain abstractions open you up, right? Like love, right? That's an abstraction. And it's an equivocation. Like, yeah, justice opens you up to having a world that you can build stuff with because there's some sense. I mean, we don't have any justice in the United States anymore. That's been for about 12 or 14 years now. I forget. Maybe longer. But I mean, it's there. Like, you can use it to build things. And actually, I think the problem is that some abstractions that are reciprocally opening, as John says, it's not reciprocal, by the way, that's not necessary. But some abstractions that open you up and allow you additional relations are the thing that collapse combinatorial explosion. Because when used in conjunction with other abstractions, maybe let's try faith, hope, and love. They point to something specific, and therefore those abstractions draw you up and in, not in a narrowing way, but in an opening way that allows you to relate things, all kinds of things, uh, to yourself and to the higher principle at the same time. And these are like, science can't really resolve things like that. There's too many free variables, they're called, or open variables. So science can't do that. We used to know this. I don't know why we don't know this anymore. And that's really the that's really the problem, right? Ixnay, maybe abstractions that are not subtractions are not models. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I haven't thought about it that way before. So, I mean, it's possible that there are abstractions that aren't models, and they're the ones that open you up. I guess. I mean, not all abstractions are models. It seems fair. But what are you trying to do? Because that's ultimately that's the question. What is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? If what you're trying to accomplish is knowing the world, then you're in having mode. Knowledge is a having mode thing. I want to have the knowledge. I want to know things. It's like, well, I don't know. I mean, there's lots of things I don't want to know. There's lots of things I've been told that I never wanted to know. I mean, I know some horrific stories from people that I'm like, why did you tell me this? Like, this is in my brain now and I want it gone, quite honestly. And I can't necessarily do that. So I don't all knowing is having mode. I don't know why you want that interaction. I'd rather being mode. I'd rather be with things in relation to things. And you can't have relations, right? I mean, maybe that seems to work for a little while, but actually you have to participate in, be in relationship. And that relationship or relationships have qualities, right? And those qualities may come and go. There may be trade-offs, costs involved in those qualities. There may be constraints to them, right? If you want to see a navigation of the constraint of the quality of a friendship, watch the movie Rounders. It's truly one of my favorite movies for this sort of a thing. It is great. Like, what are the bounds of friendship? Like, when does friendship turn into a parasitic relationship? I mean, this is actually covered in the movie rather nicely. I mean, there's multiple threads going on, but it's a beautiful film. Not talked about enough. Matt Damon's in it. It's quite good. Uh, you can totally see the Cambridge in Matt Damon. I'll tell you that much, and Ben Affleck for that matter. Um, yeah, these ways of trying to know the world are a problem because what you want to do is relate to the world. You want to be in the world. And being is all about intimacy, and intimacy is quality of the relationships. That's what it is. And that's why we're in an intimacy crisis, which causes a meaning crisis, right? And everything from there. And one way to think of it is the intimacy crisis is the feminine side, and the meaning crisis is the masculine side. That's not a bad way to think about it. Um, and everybody's trying to know the divine feminine. You know, what words can we assign to the divine? Yeah, don't do that. That was easy. That wasn't that easy. It seemed easy. Don't do that. There's no reason to, right? Why don't you be in the divine feminine like you have a mother? I don't know. Like, was that hard? That didn't seem hard. Was that hard? You could contemplate that, right? You could contemplate an archetypal mother. That wouldn't be too hard, would it? I don't think that's hard. That would solve a lot of problems. And people want to they want to have the knowledge of the divine feminine. It's like you're not going to have the knowledge of the thing that should remain veiled. I don't understand. And you shouldn't have it anyway, because then A, what are you going to do with it? And B, what about everybody else? I mean, this is the big problem is wanting to have things is narcissistic by default. Right. And look, maybe a little bit of narcissism is necessary because you have to have food, right? But also, with these larger abstractions, we'll call them, you can't have them anyway. And if you try, you're just gonna wreck everything for everyone. And please don't do that because I'm getting tired of it. It's creating a lot of chaos in the world, and what we need is less chaos, not more. Let's build stuff. It's harder, it's messier, it's way more work to build stuff. But it's much more satisfying, and it's something other people can use, sometimes even without you being around. That sounds better. Doesn't that sound better? It's not. Having is also comfortable and safe. Good observation, sir. Yeah. Having is comfortable and safe. And yeah, it's also not great. In fact, it's not even good. In fact, it's terrible. You shouldn't be reducing the world to having things. That's the closest frame to actual consumerism as you're going to get. People are constantly trying to have things instead of relate to them, instead of be with them, right? That intimate relationship is not there. And it's a problem. Like, but comfort destroys intimacy ultimately. And people think it's the opposite. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're really confused now. This is not good. Things that feel good are not necessarily good for you. Although Satan would like you to think so. I'm just saying that might be a consideration in your world. if you're so inclined to actually consider important things. Um, it's very easy to get sucked into comfort and safety as modes of interacting in the world, modes of being. But again, if you're comfort and safe, someone else has total control of your world, and they can do with you what they will, right? And maybe they put you there by mistake or by accident, but maybe that means you'll go from the comfort and safe world you have now when you get bored of it or something to another world that seems comfortable and safe. And maybe that person knows exactly what they're doing. Hmm. People often come into comfortable spaces or safe spaces or whatever with an agenda because they know they're not going to get kicked out right away. So they get to kick the tires a little bit and see if it's their tribe or see if it fits or whatever. And sometimes they're outright trolls, but sometimes just seeing if you're in a space with your tribe looks like trolling. And so they'll come in and, ask a question or make a statement and see how people react. And people get very worked up about this, but that's kind of normal behavior, especially on the internet where it's just too accessible. Like just flat out too accessible in general. And that's one of the problems. And people are whining about censorship. You get Tucker Carlson whining about censorship. How big is his channel? How censored can he be with that many viewers? I don't understand. Like your version of censorship and my version of censorship have no overlap. If your channel's that big and you're being censored, like, I don't know what censorship means at that point. What they're whining about is I can't reach the audience I want to reach. Maybe that's because you suck. Maybe because you're reaching exactly all of the audience you can. Those are possibilities. Maybe 4 people in the world care about what you care about in the way that you care about it, and you just don't like that. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just saying there's a lot of possibilities out there, and not all of them are censorship or algo or the FBI, tamping down on rebels or whatever nonsense frame you have. Like, it's quite possible that that's not real. That's just your persecution complex in your head projecting outward onto the world so you can cry censorship and feel like a hero for being maligned or something. It's more victim culture. That's what's disgusting about Tucker. It's like, bro, you're literally victim culture. When did this happen to you? You were never like that before. Like, what happened? And that's the other thing. People change, man. They stay in a safe space long enough, they get lazy. They change. They go from a good person to a bad person. Happens all the time. Safety and comfort turns good people into bad people pretty reliably without any outside influence whatsoever. Just the fact of being safe and comfortable can make people soft and weak and prone to evil. So, you can keep people safe if you want. You can keep them comfortable if you want, but you might not be doing them a favor. And again, that's not saying don't give somebody comfort. It's saying don't keep them in comfort. Don't keep them in safety. That's not the world they live in. They can't stay there forever because they'll grow weak. Just look around. This has already happened. I mean, we've got people screaming at the sky over ridiculous things that screaming at the sky isn't going to change. Like, I don't even know what you're doing. Like, why you look ridiculous? I laugh at you. I mean, it's good for me. I get entertained, but I don't think it's good for them, and that makes me sad. Um, and if it's a laugh or cry situation like that, I think I'm gonna laugh. And there's nothing you're gonna do about it except scream at the sky more, and that's gonna make me laugh more. So worked out great for me. And that's the thing. We all need rest. We all need comfort. Right? We just have to discern when it's too much or just enough, and then we have to get out of it. Because we've got to build and we've got to grow and we've got to change and we've got to be challenged and we've got to proceed towards the good. And you can't do that if you're safe and comfortable. You're only not moving while the world is moving, right? Which means, relatively speaking, you're sliding back, or you're actively sliding back towards evil. I don't know. But not my recommendation. Again, that may be why you work a bunch of days and you only take 1 or 2 days off, right? Because you need to build up the forward momentum so that the slide back on the rest day doesn't really put you back that far. That happens. Comfort and safety are a trap. They're a trap to turn you into an NPC, into an ideologue. They're a trap to make everything you do a LARP. Are you comfortable and safe? You're LARPing. I've been to many LARP events, by the way. They're quite fun sometimes. But most of the people there are, they're not the best. Lots of incidents. But beating people with foam swords is quite enjoyable, especially when they're dressed up in silly foam armor and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of fun. I've been there before. I don't participate all that much necessarily. Usually I was photography, something like that. Um, I like photographing things. It's rather fun. Yeah, people don't realize LARPing, it can only be done in comfort, right? If you do it outside of comfort, you get ripped apart. That's what happens. Don't do that. There's no reason to. All right, man. No one's watching, and no one wants to jump in and say hi. It's very depressing. So I'll give it a few minutes, but if no one jumps in, then I'm gonna cut it short, which is fine because man, I had a couple long streams in a row. Talk about needing a rest. It's safe not to stream. It's not safe to stream. You never know who's gonna jump in. Poor Father Eric on Sunday. You never know who's gonna hop into a live stream and cause trouble, or how many troublemakers from other spaces you're gonna have hop into your live stream and just take up space, or try to hog the conversation, or just generally not be useful, not be generative. There's a lot of that on the internet. More of that on Twitch, I would say, than YouTube in general. But I don't know. I mean, there's so much comfort out there, and people are so used to comfort and safety that, yeah, they don't know how to act, and they think like, oh, it's new. Everything's new. The internet's not new. Okay, like internet communities have been around for decades, and they're successful, and they follow rules. We know what the rules are. And we know what rules don't work, all the other ones. Ken nor Thunder. Sorry, buddy. First time here, but busy doing plumbing. Oh, that's okay. There's no pressure. Plumbing is good. You want to replumb my house? Because I'm in the market for a plumber. Maybe next year. Small house, be replumbed in no time. Also, might want to put another bathroom on the house, but I need a GC for that. Because we got to put more room on the house, because small house. Yeah, I mean, safety and leisure gives people the idea that they can get away with things that they can't get away with. And it gives people the idea that their interaction with the world is fake. Because reality is the thing that objects to your subjective experience. It's a partial definition, but you have a subjective experience, something's pushing against it. That's called reality. Right? It's not a complete definition of reality, but also it's definitely reality. And you can argue and say, well, it's really somebody else's subjective experience pushing back on mine. You're both in reality, and therefore, yes, but that's still part of reality. You may not like it because you want to be equal to them, and then there's no way to resolve whose subjective experience should take precedence in the world. Oops. And that's you're not using my pronouns. Okay. You're a mentally ill person then who has a problem understanding how language works and also thinks they're in charge of something that they're definitely never going to be in charge of. Other people's speech is not something you are in charge of. Sorry. You've been comforted and kept safe too long, and you don't realize you don't run the world and you don't run other people, and you shouldn't try to run other people. And you can tell people that come from too much comfort and safety because they often have solutions that involve other people changing, but not them. There's a hint, there's a tell in the world. Do they talk about changes that everybody else should make without talking about the changes they make? There you go. Probably a person to avoid, probably a snake. Sanjuro, I'm being a dad tonight, or I would join you. How dare you be a dad? Your talk brings a whole new meaning to creature comforts. Yes. Thank you, Sandro. I don't remember authorizing you to be a dad. I don't know where this came from, but unacceptable. Unacceptable. The problem is I get this nice flag up because Castle's not here. So now I'm like, what the hell, man? But I think he's afraid. I think he knows he's coming up against the big pirate daddy and he's got fear in his heart. And that's why he couldn't show up because he's too comfortable and safe with his little pirate thing. And the fact that I'm upping my pirate game makes him feel bad. That's what I'm going to tell my that's what I'm going to tell Mike Castle's going to give me an earful when I talk to him next. I did legit think Castle would be here though, because he has been, but apparently I'm being betrayed on all sides. Castle, Sanjuro, even Jesse's not here, although Jesse's been hopping in real late when he hops in. Yeah, it's just, you guys are not giving me the comfort and safety that I've come to expect from my live stream. Oh yeah, it's such a good frame. Comfort is such a good frame to understand others in, right? Are they comfortable? Oh, okay. Comfortable, like academics are comfortable. Right? Almost everybody in academia is comfortable. And this is actually one of the great critiques that a number of people have about tenure, right? Tenure makes you comfortable and safe. Right. And the theory is because you're comfortable and safe, you're, allowed to, experiment with wild ideas that otherwise wouldn't be accepted. Okay, that's bullshit. That's an easier way to fix that problem. It's called uh, just accept the wild ideas, dumbass. You can do that. Like that's easier. Um, and maybe, but it can be abused. And when you start looking at things from the positive only side, like BF Skinner attitude to life, you screw up and everything goes horribly wrong. And there's other, say, side effects to comfort. Castle, there he is. I'm here to destroy your safe space. It will come destroy my safe space. The link is pinned on navigating patterns, bro. Um, I pinned it and everything. I actually remembered, which isn't always the case. So I've been reading because Jesse sent me. I know a year ago almost. Sorry, Jesse. Jesse sent me a copy of Clockwork Orange, and in the beginning of the book, the copy that he sent me, it has an excellent introduction that talks about the author. Was it Anthony Burgess? And the setting for the book and all this background material. And one of the things that he talks about is Burgess is allowing his book to be edited and manipulated by people for money. And it's like, and then he's complaining, and I'm like, bro, You wanted to be safe financially, so you sold out your artistic integrity to a publisher, and now you're pissed off. You did that to yourself because you wanted safety and comfort. You didn't want to suffer for your art. Well, your art suffered for you. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I found that so interesting, right? And it's so wrong on so many levels too. It's like, wow. And it's not clear where the cynicism in the movie comes from, because the movie is based off the US version of the book, which dropped the last chapter. So the ending's improper. And I haven't finished the book yet, unfortunately. It's going to take a while. That book is a bear. I hate it when people make up language. I absolutely hate it. Like, do not make up your own words. Like, why? Why are you doing this to the world? But it's interesting just because you can see the corrupted telos. Right? It's right there. Corrupted telos of art. Is Anthony Burgess a real artist if he lets people corrupt his art? I don't know, man. I got my doubts. Castle!
Hey.
There he is.
How you doing?
What do you think?
It was good. You know, I was catching up on 2X there for like the longest time, but
No, the flag. Forget about the damn
the
monologue.
flag. Oh yeah, well no, it was horrible, but the flag is amazing. It's so good. I saw that, so I tuned in as soon as I finally got my car about an hour ago, and I was just like, finally the upgrades. You know, I'm still waiting on the bird, but
It's coming.
You know,
It's coming.
But I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, uncomfortable week. For sure.
Yeah. Comfort is gone. When that's chaos does away with comfort and safety. So it's going to be interesting to see the comfort people encounter with chaos. Half of them are going to go nuts. There's going to be a lot of suffering out there. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's very useful. Like, I mean, we've talked about this in the past, and you covered it in your monologue, that you grow through suffering. Like, you actually can't get better or learn anything, you know, in a safe environment, you know, outside of like just kind of some basic stuff. Like, you can't truly be tested and like actually know, okay, I can apply this, and you know, or I can do this in the face of resistance, or like keep up with entropy, you know, doing this stuff. But when you're trying to like, even just basic stuff like household chores, where it's just like that the trash is always filling up, the dishes are always piling up, you know, and it's just like, I've seen this so much, and like I was this for a long time, where it's just like, you know, you leave that stuff and it's like, well, you know, I'll get to it and everything, and it's just like, no, like it just becomes worse for you, and then that's where you see like that dead wood thing start happening, where it's like, I have been in like the full blaze mode of like, okay, everything has been left to become dead wood for so long that now like I don't know what's me or not, you know.
Right.
And
well, that's the problem with comfort and safety, is that it blurs the boundaries because you're not testing anymore. You're not pushing yourself to the limit. Well, what that means when you blur the boundaries is that basically you become possessed by the things around you and you never notice it because you're comfortable and safe. And then basically you're overwhelmed by either the thing making you safe or something in the safe space. And you never even see it. You'll never see it. You'll defend everything because either it's making you safe or you think it's part of your safety, even when it's not. And you think it's part of you because you can't tell where you begin or where you end and other things begin anymore. And like, I mean, I hate to invoke it, but yeah, possession, man. Right. You are possessed by the things around you. Sanjuro, but Tolkien made up a language. I'm gonna smack you. I mean, and that's always the problem, is that the safe and comfortable, you lose your identity, right? You've voluntarily given up your identity already, and maybe that's okay for a while because you need rest. I get that.
Yeah.
But if you stay there too long, you're gonna lose those boundaries and those limits. But do you have notes from the?
No, I was driving. But
you were driving.
Yeah, no. But But something just clicked there. So you mentioned that, and I was immediately thinking of Mathieu Pajot talking about, and we had kind of discussed this in brief before, like the credit thing. It's like, no, going in for comfort is like taking out on credit. Like that is a manifestation of that larger pattern that both of those two are in. It's like, oh my goodness, like that has a lot of implications that like just clicked, and I'm gonna have to chew on that for days. But that, oh my goodness,
that's a good spot. Well, that's why you work, right? You work up the credit, and then you spend the credit in rest. And if you're not doing that work, someone else is, and you are indebted to them.
Yeah.
And that's where the possession, becomes a danger. That's where the, and if that goes away and you don't have the skills to survive without it, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. Well,
that's more the issue.
I was thinking of kind of like the Klarna and like PayPal Pay in 4 type of stuff. Because I realized over the last like few months, like I don't have a credit card or anything like that. But I also don't have any more, like I paid off my car a year ago. And I was enslaved to that for like 7 years or something like that. It was a nightmare. But it was a bad deal that was made in a time of necessity. And it was just, it was rough. But it was $400 a month for like 7 years because it started out as a lease and then like going into to purchase it instead. And it was it was a horrific thing to start in my teens. And then of course the interest kind of builds up. So they say, well, you'll be done with this by the certain time, but it's like, no, I'm paying the loan. I'm not paying the actual payment. So then at that point, you just added 2 more years or something like that of indentured servitude. But it is absolutely horrific. But because of that, I noticed like my credit score started slipping. And I found out that apparently if you purchase things on PayPal Pay in 4, it actually increases your credit, which is nice. Also, you have to keep track of those rotating 4 payments, and they're, if you're like, well, nice, I can do that right now because I have the money. It's like, well, be ready because, in 2 weeks, whatever day that falls on, and that's going to be there. And if you, do like I did, and like it's all worked out, and these weren't, some of them were frivolous, not all of them. Then you're kind of looking at, okay, now I have like 9 separate payments that are happening, over the course of 2 weeks. And now I have to like do math, which is just kind of like, okay, there's a possession right there. Like the last thing I want to do is be possessed by math. And, and there's what I did to myself. So I'll be free from, the clutches of math, hopefully by sometime, at the end of the month, I think. So that'll be good. And then never again will I ever do math. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah. So Mark left to a safe space, talking so much smack. I heard it. I heard him doing it, and then there he goes.
No, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because what you're trading, in that instance is you're trading because it's not your future income with a system like that. You're trading the time in your money flow.
Yeah.
That's what you're trading for. And so it's not classic debt, right? Because with a mortgage or credit card payment, if you slip a couple of days, it actually doesn't affect anything generally. Yeah. Unless you do it every time, like it's not a big deal. Also, they tend to be monthly, so whatever. You can overpay too, right? Like that's not a problem. But with those systems, the game they're playing is they're selling cash flow.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different game. And if you don't understand that, it's like, oh, wait a minute. There's lots of ways to deal with money. And cash flow is a whole different way to think about cash. Like having money coming in on a regular enough basis to pay your bills, and having enough of it, right? But like if it's a day late, you're kind of screwed. I mean, when they changed all the laws in the 90s, they went from, so it used to be banking in the United States had a nice little rule where it was a 3-day float on your checks, but that applied equally, universally to the banks and to the person.
Yeah.
So if you wrote a check, you had a 6-day float on that money, technically. right? So you could write the check, send the check out, post date it and everything, right? So like you post date it for the first,
Yeah.
3 days for it to clear one side, and 3 days for it to clear the other side. That's 6 days. And when they changed that law under Bill Clinton, saying, with the help of the Republicans for sure, all scumbags, they gave the banks the float and took it away from you. And so a bunch of people like bounced a bunch of checks overnight with no warning.
Yeah.
And the banks in general, like my banks, were all small. They were all like, yeah, we'll fix this. And I was like, good. Like, you can't change the rules and like not warn me. Like, come on. Like, that's a little stupid. Like, I've been playing this game for a long time with you people, and changing the rules is not copacetic. So they refunded all the bounce check fees, but and people always talk about it's a trap. It's deliberate. It's not deliberate. It's a function of cost. Like, if your check bounces, you cost the banks money. They have to recoup that loss. Like, it's not a free system. Systems cost money to run.
Yeah.
So that timing is important. And now it's all screwed up too, because people want instant money, but they're still playing the float. And so there's all sorts of nonsense going on. Like, I think actually a significant number of the banks have actually no reserve cash at all. And in the United States, you are not required to have reserve cash to give a loan as a bank.
Wow.
At all. You're not required to have a dime. Not one dime, not even 2%. I think it was 2 or 7% before, and now it's actually 0.
Wow.
And I'm like, wait, uncollateralized loans is a thing now? Like, what kind of nonsense is that? But they're just trying to keep the money flow so fast and tight. But I mean, that's not going to last. That's going to come crashing down at some point. But this is all follow on from 2008. And they're still trying to get in front of that. And I'm like, no, you can't just transfer wealth from individuals with houses to banks who are scumbags and actually committed fraud and expect that isn't going to come back to haunt you later. Because it is. Because it did with the savings and loan scandal in 2008 are exactly the same scandal, in some cases done by the same players. And it's exactly the same scam. And it's like, why are you falling for these scams all the time? Why can't you just tighten the rules back down the way they were and keep them tight? Like, I don't understand why you keep loosening the rules, having the same error, and then having to put the rules back. Like, this is nonsense.
It's just too much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we want comfort. Yeah. Like, it's weird, right? Like, people are always like, the cost of milk is, whatever. And I'm like, okay, go to the convenience store, grab a gallon of milk, tell me how much it costs. Go to your large grocery store, grab a gallon of milk, tell me how much it costs. I guarantee you it's not the same amount. It's the same milk from the same company. It was on the same damn delivery truck.
Yeah.
What is value? I have
you're
videos
trying to shop at CVS at it's like, oh, CVS is the only thing that's open at 2 a.m. and you have to pay 3 times as much for something.
Right. It's a convenience store.
Yeah.
Convenience. That's what you're paying for, convenience.
Yeah.
You're not just paying for the item, you're paying for that too. But you're also paying for convenience. But I have videos on money and value and all that stuff on navigating patterns. Check it out. You'll understand this stuff better.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Well, on the topic of the sort of comfort thing, like I think I might have told you this story before, and I'll kind of do like the short version, but just because it's kind of relevant here, that I worked with a police officer who she was originally a security officer, so wasn't required to carry a gun, and then they changed the policy that everyone has to be a police officer, and then the few people who got kind of like grandfathered in as security officers, like they could be there, but they would be the last of them, and you weren't allowed to have 2 on a shift or anything like that. Like they had to just be kind of like an auxiliary service, that could kind of show up. And so with that, like they required a certain level of qualification. And because this was a private police department, they had set higher standards for the rules. So the police officers had to qualify with their firearms 4 times a year rather than the 2 times a year that the municipality would require. And the requirements for accuracy were also higher. So they had to be performing well, and they needed to know their gear. And it wasn't just the firearm; it was all of their stuff. They needed to know it very, very well. And she didn't want to practice because she would go and she would, she worked a nice day shift, and she had worked up to that over many years, and so she kind of believed that she was nice and logged in. But over time, like, things started to get computerized. She didn't want to learn anything about how to even navigate, like, Microsoft Word and these types of things, and like doing, email stuff. She didn't want to really get good at that. They did stuff, to be fair, the department did a lot of stuff by hand on paper with pen for a very, very long time. And like even punching in and everything like that, like all of that stuff was done by hand. So like she was able to get away with it, for another 15 years longer than anybody else. And but then the time came that they were like, okay, well, she failed the qualification, and then she failed it again. And like people offered to like buy her stuff and take her out and to buy her ammo and like to teach her things and all this stuff, but she was going out drinking into restaurants and stuff with her friends, and she was making good money, and she still was even after all this whole thing. But she lost her shift because they said, well, look, we can't trust you with the firearm. We're not going to fire you, but you also, there's already another security officer on your shift, and because you failed, they shouldn't have to be punished. So,
Right.
you didn't make the sacrifice. So the sacrifice was made for you, and it wasn't the one you would have wanted. And she lamented for like 6 months. Like it was like a serious lament. It was really rough. But it's like that's a good example, of these types of things happening.
Yeah, I mean, comfort bites you eventually because you're controlled by all these people. The safety has a cost, and you need to see that. Let's see, Ixnon. It's like my kids making up their own rules for board games. I've talked about that before. There's nothing wrong with that. Fluor's Lava, everyone's favorite game. Jesse, not to invoke my usual topic of, quote, modern stories through Hollywood, end quote, but the medium of film is the peak, quote, safe space, end quote, medium. They blur the boundaries of reality and comfort. Yeah, we need to kick Jesse off. That's too insightful. Only my insights are allowed here, sir. No, I like that. That's really good. Yeah, I mean, and they also give you a false fantasy comfort world at the same time. Like, so they're comforting. Like, going to the movies I love going to the movies. Like, I have a movie theater down the street. Thank goodness. It's 5 miles from the house. IMAX and everything. It's got everything. It's great. And it's never full, which is sad. But also, they're still open. So, yay. Movie theater popcorn, right? Way more popcorn than anybody should ever eat, right? And sit down and watch the latest. And I've probably told the story before, but like back in the day, I was watching Sargon of Akkad's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Back when he was still posting it regularly, although he's resurrected it to some extent, which is I find hysterically funny. And he was talking about the Joker movie, and he said, well, I'm going to do a review of Joker and how it's relevant, and if you haven't seen Joker, go watch it now. And I paused it and I looked up and I found out like 30 minutes the movie was playing. So I hopped in the car and drove to the movie theater, and I went and watched it and came back and unpaused the video because I'm a psychopath. So it was great. I'm like, my life is wonderful. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, you get into. I mean, nowadays movie theaters with the chairs, a little bit of reclining, they're comfy chairs. You've got your candy, your popcorn, and your drink, and the whole thing. It's great. It's great. Yeah, you go to like Chunky's or something, which is a thing up in New England that we used to go to. They've got like car chairs.
Oh, nice.
And tables, and they serve you food. Like they bring food to you. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I've been to a place like that a couple of times before. It's amazing. It really is good. But you can't do that every week, I mean, if you had the money.
I know somebody who
now
used to do that every week.
Can or should, I guess, is what I'm
trying to
say here.
Right. You make enough money, you sure as hell can. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to. The raft of movies has been horrific lately. Jesse, most spaces are a fantasy. Yeah, especially when they start pointing at the space and getting sophisticated. And I'm like, what are you doing? Jesse, hence why most so-called fandoms become consuming. Yeah. 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 I was in the beginning of the fandom thing. I lived at a place called Fandom House. That's how beginning it was. And yeah, I used to know all the folks who ran Aresia, which is a science fiction convention in Boston that got corrupted a few years back by demons, of course. And yeah, just watching the development of that. And I mean, they were all online people. This is early
Yeah.
internet stuff, right? Pre-internet and early internet. They were, a lot of these people worked at, FTP Software. They worked at the Free Software Foundation, right? They were plugged into that scene.
Yeah.
And they would go off and LARP and whatever, early LARPing, really early. I mean, they called it LARPing, right? It wasn't. Yeah, they had King Richard's Fair, stuff like that. Like it was fun. It was, early Ren fairs, SCA, that whole thing.
Oh,
But like I watched how it developed, like, and yeah, I mean, the statement that really bowled me over. There's a lot of drama from these little cults. But the statement that really bowled me over was PVK saying, "Well, we're still working this out. We don't know how this works." And I'm like, "No, you don't know how this works, dude. People have been on the internet actually do know how this works, and you just refuse to use any of the methods that work. That's a different problem. That's you being a rebel, being stubborn, and not wanting to do things that are responsible and require work. Probably because you're lazy. It could be other reasons, but like you're definitely also lazy. That's not a function of the world. Like that's not a we need to figure this out. No, we know how to do this. We know how to run online communities. Etiquette and politeness, which have worked for thousands of years in person, still work on the internet just as well, actually. It's just that you've already rebelled against that, which is why you're on the freaking internet. And that's your problem, is that you're a rebel, not the world. The world's not a problem. The world is something you need to conform to by definition. The world is not a problem to be solved. There are not problems in the world. There are problems with you. That's where the problems are. Like it's not that hard. Yeah, when you watch like the unfolding of fandom, you see that people are just trying to scrape by and make a living, and maybe they're sick because almost everybody was freaking sick all the time. My God, they're all vegans too. Vegans are always ill. It's unbelievable. They're so stupid. It's like maybe your veganism is the reason why you're ill all the time. No, it can't be that. Oh, yeah, it's definitely that. All the numbers show it too. If you were honest about research, you'd know that. Whatever. But everybody wants to help everybody out, and they should. They're all part of a little community thing or whatever, right? They're part of their little fandoms. And so someone would do some knitting, or somebody would make some steampunk stuff or whatever, and they'd set up tables, or they'd have little things, sanctioned or unsanctioned, we'll say, in their rooms, and just sell stuff. And maybe they were reselling board games or whatever. But that was a big part of it, right? Because we consume. Like you have to eat. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like consumerism is the worst frame ever. Because like, well, yeah, of course we consume. Who cares? Like, oh, no kidding. So does every other creature on the planet. Like, what are you saying at that point? Because honestly, I just don't know what you're saying. Consumerism. Yeah, okay, we consume. Right? I don't. You're not gonna resolve anything by pointing out something obvious like we consume.
no.
Jesse, most blurring of boundaries is done through offering safety and comfort, right? Hence, willing the loss of identity. Yeah, and loss. Yeah, I mean, look, you cooperate with the world, and you cooperate with other people in the world. And if you seek comfort and safety, somebody will come along and give it to you. But they control the show now, and you did that to yourself. They didn't do that to you. Like you were enticed by the comfort and safety. What is a safe space? Right? And then into the safe space come bad people, come demons, come all kinds of things. And then you won't see it. That's the bigger problem. You won't even see it.
I'm thinking of the theater thing and just kind of like the extreme comfort, because I remember, so Quentin Tarantino owns at least one movie theater. And I went to the one that he owns called the New Beverly a couple of times, and it's in Beverly Hills. And it's this dumpy little white building that's attached to a bunch of other buildings and everything. But historical theater, it's it's been there for since it's like one of the earliest theaters that they had in that area, and it might actually be the oldest theater that they had in that town. And you go, and it's just kind of like, it's a very simple, very plain sort of place. It doesn't have his name on it or any of these things. So there's like a basic little marquee, like in the old style, and they just say, okay, like, on like Tuesday and Saturday we're playing movies, and then they'll tell you what movie it is, and it's like, it'll be like Seven Samurai on Tuesday at midnight or something like that.
Yeah,
Or like, here's a French director that did 3 animations that you've never heard of. Each one is
right.
2.5 hours long, and we're going to do a triple feature.
Oh,
You're going to show up, you pay $20 or whatever, you go in, you wait in line to get in. They only serve popcorn and like 3 different flavors of drinks. That's it. And then you walk in, and it's all wooden fold out chairs. That's it. Like, just the kind that just kind of like wear on your lower back. Just wooden fold out chairs, enough to seat maybe 100 people, maybe less. Might have been closer to like 70
wow.
chairs or something like that. They have, where the money is there's a huge amount of projectors that they probably have like in the back, but every type of film, like they could just project it. So they'd have all these different types of film. They had the nice screens and everything like that, the curtains. Sometimes they'd go and they'd say like, oh, we actually have the guy that directed this, or here's so and so, and like they'd do a little thing up on the stage, and then they'd leave. And then you're just there with popcorn in the uncomfortable seat, but you're there because it's like, okay, I'm conforming to the experience that they're providing. It's all that they have. I know I'm not there for comfort. I'm like, this is where the people who are like, the major like Roger Ebert type guys
Yeah,
are
yeah.
going to go, and that's where they're spending their time. And the way they kind of have it is like, yeah, it's going to be a triple feature. If you only want to watch the first one, like, you can just go. Like, we're not trying to sell you on anything or any of this stuff. It's just like, yeah, like, we're doing this, and we're going to be at it until 4 a.m. and you can just leave when you like, And they had a nice structure. There was always intermissions in between movies, of course.
Yep.
And then they would I think they would actually even kick you out in between movies, so that they could clean up. So they'd kick you out of like the entire building because there wasn't enough room in the lobby for everyone. And so you just be like wandering around on the street, until they're like, okay, you can go back in, and they would just run that. And it's like, okay, if you were serious about it and like you're actually there for the thing, and you're going to follow the rules too. Like, they had, not a lot of rules, but it's just like, okay, we're just going to have it this way. This is the New Beverly experience, and you're going to have that or leave. It's like, they're not trying to cater to anything. And it was really impressive. It was a wonderful experience. I highly recommend it. But it was very interesting.
Yeah, the fandoms always had movie marathons. Some rooms would have like anytime, like 24/7 in the con, they'd have movies.
Nice.
Yeah, they'd have areas for movies, and I like Ixnay knows this. Fandom becomes a mush, a multi-user shared hallucination. Yep. And mushes came first, which is even more interesting. But a movie is a mush. It's a multi-user shared hallucination. I mean, that's what a movie is, right? And it's just like an upgrade to that system. I mean, that's all it is. It's a computerization, a digitalization of a mush. It's in some ways much more rich, and it combines a chat system with a fantasy world, with a set of rules, and with the ability to usually to build your own rooms or whatever, right? Set up your own rules inside the multi-user shared hallucination. Mushes and muds are fascinating, but they they just spiral into closed worlds, closed flat worlds, because they have to. Like, resources are limited in the world, and especially with tech. And the more people you let in, the more watered down the event gets, and that's not great. But movies are shared hallucinations. That's what they are. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. We all need rest. But like back in the 40s and 50s, like movie theaters were open all the time. Movies were constantly playing. And when they weren't playing movies, they were playing newsreels because people didn't have TVs.
Yeah.
And so, like, this new, and we don't really understand. Like, you think that the technology you have is stable and, we'll say, progressing, but actually we lose technology all the time. We lose way more technology than
Oh
we
yeah.
generate, and people don't realize that.
Yeah, have you
And
seen those old trailers, or not, like the advertisements for like the old style refrigerators? And it's just like these things are built like tanks, and they have like all these features where it's like, wow, that's like, what you would see on like the Jetsons, and it's like, why don't we have that now? Oh, we had it 60 years ago. It's just like, and we don't have it
right,
anymore. Yeah,
right. Well, we over engineer things,
no,
right, to get the costs down, right? Because there's this whole interaction with consumers,
yeah,
right? And that's the problem. I mean, people don't realize it, but yeah, you want a cheap refrigerator? Well, it's not going to last as long. That's the trade-off, just flat
yeah,
out. But that doesn't mean that paying more for a refrigerator gives you a longer lasting refrigerator, because there's more to it than that. There's not a one-to-one
right.
relationship with the cost. Like, sorry. You can pay as much as you want for anything. Castle, I will sell you that flag for $1 million right now, dude.
Yeah, absolutely not.
I'm just saying, you can pay as much as you want
Yeah,
for the flag. Like, I'm offering you, out of the generosity of my heart, the ability to do.
yeah. How kind.
True. See, finally, someone sees me. Someone recognizes me.
Yeah,
I
but I
feel
gotta.
comforted, like I'm in my safe space.
Oh goodness, I'll have to fix that. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, it's just it's too much. I see there's somebody I know works at a company that is producing um like high-tech stuff for the present day, and they're doing
Mhm.
it all on machines that stopped being made in the 80s.
Oh
And
wow.
some of those machines are enormous and hyper efficient and irreplaceable, and there's nothing, like the company that made them doesn't exist anymore, and parts aren't made for
Right.
them anymore, but they're
Right.
irreplaceable, and they're
Yep.
from the 80s, and some of these things are not allowed to be shut off, and they have like backup generators and all
Right.
these things, because they're like, if it shuts off it might not ever turn on again, so we haven't shut it off in 50 years.
Yep.
It's just
Yep.
like that type of thing is definitely in there. And then apparently they've got like a basement full of like, all these inventions and stuff that just never saw the light of day. And it's just like, oh, like all the, all the cool, it's probably like normal stuff and everything, like some kind of like fancy stapler or whatever, but it's just like all the stuff that you would expect in Area 51. It's just in the basement at this company, just getting ready to get tossed into the trash compactor. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Ixnay. There was a guy in the 60s or 70s who had a working prototype flying car. Yeah, flying cars aren't new. They're not even close to new. Yeah, and everyone's, oh, it's new. None of this stuff is new. But yeah, like, this is the fusion thing. Like, fusion is gonna.
Oh yeah, any day now.
There are commercials from the 1940s that say fusion is 5 years around the corner. For real. Like, I've seen them. I thought they were hysterical. I had no idea they existed because I wasn't around then. But I was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. You people have literally been banging this drum since the 1940s. And there's a I think it's on Amazon Prime. There's a documentary called ITER, which is about the project in France to build a fusion machine. And like, people don't understand the nuances of this. Like, it takes so much power to get the damn thing going that it's questionable as to whether or not it's even worth it. Like, I don't even, it's one of these principles where, like, well, if you put enough energy in, you generate 1% more than it takes to run it. And I'm like, okay, but how long does it take you to generate the initial energy back? Because that's actually really important, right? Because it might be never. Like, I don't know, but I don't think you do either. In which case, you've just fallen prey to the law of thermodynamics. I don't. Maybe you can't do what you're trying to do. Like, there are limits in the world. Like, I don't.
Well, it sounds like that's kind of like the dark side of like the of like, oh, like the mass produced refrigerator, where it's just like, okay, yeah, but also you need to be able to, if you're trying to sell fusion, then you actually need to be able to do that to some degree. Otherwise, there's lots of things that I've done and that I've made that it's just like, yeah, you could never market that. Not because it's not good, but because you can't produce it at a cost that anyone will pay.
Right.
Like, yeah, this
Right.
is great. Like, I could design stuff that would be like, oh yeah, this is awesome. Like, I've got ideas for things that I know would be awesome, but also it would cost $3,000 to produce. And it's the type of thing that, you would want to sell for $800 or something like that. And it's just like, yeah, it's
Right.
not going to happen. No one is ever going to. I'll buy it once for myself, and then no one will ever, and then it'll be sitting in a basement, ready
Right.
to get tossed into a trash compactor one day.
But people don't realize that who haven't built things. I've built
Yeah.
lots of things. I've built entire companies and stuff. Like, man, it's a mess. It's a mess. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, and it's usually not worth it. And you can't know that until you try it in some cases.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's just not clear. Sandra, banging the fusion drum is comfortable. Yeah, it is. Well, because it gives you comfort in the future that like cheap energy will be solved or something. It's like, I don't know about that.
I think you've used the example, I think, before of Elon Musk, where it's like, well, you're successful at other stuff, and then now you can use that to incur heavy costs on producing some other sort of thing.
Right.
But you can't start there. Like, and I've seen
Right.
that with other people where it's like, oh, there's a guy who's extremely wealthy and his wife wants to run a bakery.
Yep.
And it's just like the guy will buy the bakery and we'll set up all the supply chain stuff and everything like that. And like, she can go and be a professional baker and have the thing and like a large thing, like on a farm with like their own stuff and everything. And it's like, yeah, millions of dollars, and they got it. But also you couldn't start like that, and it's just like, if you're
Right.
like, that's a nice thing that she has something to do. And like, they have that arrangement and they can afford to do it. Like, your friend with the movie theater, it's just like, you can do it, and it's like, that's cool. But also, it's like, at least definitely be grateful for the fact that you can do that,
Right. ABC Bakery lol. If you know, you know. Well, also all the vineyards in California, since the 90s, right when that became too expensive. Excuse me, to buy one.
Yeah.
People were never going to make the initial cost back, and it doesn't matter. I mean, people take losses all the time, and people don't understand that. They think like business is just in it for money. Okay, except most businesses fail. So if businesses are just in business for money and most businesses fail, what does that tell you about your thesis? Yeah, it's wrong.
Right.
It's wrong, right?
Yeah.
Lots of businesses are losing money and are there because it's somebody's hobby.
Yeah.
Lots of businesses are like that, and you just have no idea. And the thing is, you see somebody set up a bakery and buy all this stuff and be successful. You have no idea what that took ever.
Oh, yeah.
You never know because you were never there, and you've never built anything in your worthless life, and so you don't understand what it takes to build anything. And you project onto the world this flat world version of, oh, they just set it up, or even if I had enough money, yeah, all the money in the world, you could easily spend $1 billion, and people will just steal it and not give you what you want. Like, that happens all the time.
I witnessed it. Yeah.
It happens all the time. Like, literally all the time. Like, people get ripped off all the time for large sums of money.
Yeah.
This actually happened in the symbolic world, folks. Like, they actually got a bunch of publishers, stole their money, and didn't deliver.
I remember. Yeah, and then they're still dealing with the fallout of that, or I think they just came out of it or something. I don't know. Like, yeah,
Richard Rowland saved them. It's like,
that went
it,
out
I
for
could,
like a
I
year.
could have saved them from that. I didn't know what was going on. That's easy.
Yeah.
Easy fix.
Yeah, it was like, I knew something was up when God's Dog took like 8 months to show up, and I was just
Right.
like, and then I saw the emails, because normally I don't check all this stuff because it's all junk usually. But I looked at that and I was like, oh my goodness, like, they're having a nightmare that they just showed up and everything is just sitting in boxes and like there's nobody working on anything. It's like, yep, there you go.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
They have more problems with Snow White, I think.
Yeah,
just showed
they
up
absolutely did.
Yeah, those people were gone. Their money was gone. They were nowhere. There was no.
Yeah.
It was just gone. Like, that happens all the time.
I still haven't read the. So I bought it, but I waited so long that I just kind of like I got it and it's still in the plastic, and I put it to the side because I wanted to have also like the sort of companion book that they were gonna have with it, and I was like,
Yeah.
well, so but I waited an additional 6 months for that, so I was like, oh, it would be nice to do them back to back, and then do that, and then now I got them both, and they're just sitting on a shelf, But I'll get there eventually. Like the time will strike, but. Yeah.
The companion book shipped before the book.
Wow. And I
So if
got
you
it.
went to the Symbolic World Conference, you could buy the companion book.
Okay.
And I did do that because my dear friend who lives here, she said, if you can buy a copy of Snow White, I'll pay you for it.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, whatever. And then I went there and they're like, no, we don't have any copies, but we've got the companion book. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll buy the companion book and give it to her.
Yeah.
I did something, right? That way she got something from the she
yeah.
couldn't go. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy what people will do. And that business logistics, even if people aren't ripping you off, yeah, luck with that. Like if you have no experience, you have no idea what that takes. You have no experience with it. It's a nightmare.
I remember seeing a baker. He talked about something like he had to, in order to make $1 back, he had to sell 1,000 cookies or something like that. Like
Oh
just
my
something
God.
absurd. And but some of that also was like kind of where there's a state inspector, and then there's like the kind of the health organization inspector, and so one of them wants a door that opens this way, and then the other one wants a door that goes that way. So he has two doors, and he swaps them out depending on who's scheduled to come in where. Just absolutely ridiculous. But did you ever see that show, Clarkson's Farm, with that Jeremy Clarkson from the Top Gear?
No.
It's a decent show, but the main thing is like there's a lot of actually like kind of helpful stuff about farming that he does horribly, but like he learns the hard way on every sort of thing. And that's an example of like he has the money to spend on this stuff, but
doesn't
not
need
so
to be
much.
profitable.
Yeah, but not so much money that he could keep doing that for. Like he actually wants to live on this farm. Like he genuinely wants that to be his home, and he wants it to be successful. And like the township that he's in comes after him because he's famous. And it's like, and he wants to open up like a farmer's market where the nearby farms can sell him, and they won't let him do it. And then you see like, oh yeah, I bought this amount of this amount of seed, and then I need this amount of fertilizer, but like I should have bought one a week before the other one, and then now the entire thing is spoiled, and I just lost $40,000. It's like, oh my goodness, and that he was being propped up along with the other farmers by like federal grants or something that then stopped in like 2020. So then they reached the end, and they tally up how much the farm made. So because they're kind of going in like a little bit of is kind of like exposition of like, oh well, here's if we raise sheep or pigs, or if we did wheat or whatever, like here's how we would do if we did that. And they reached the end of it, and they were like, oh yeah, we're in the green, but only because of the government grants, and they're not going to be coming next year, and all the money we did make that we're in the green for needs to go towards buying seed. And it's just like, wow. And it just like he keeps going, but it's clearly that his other pursuits are 100% funding the rest of this stuff. Like he gets to the point where he's buying like used farm equipment and stuff, where he's like, now he has to start making smart financial decisions because he's put millions of dollars into it. It's like, man, absolutely crazy.
Well, startup costs are a concern. So like I was reading this thing, or maybe I saw it on CNBC or something years ago, and they were talking to this guy who, I guess he's known for liquefied natural gas.
Yeah.
And he was trying to get money for his new LNG project. And I forget how much money it actually was, but I think it was $1 billion.
Wow.
So you need $1 billion, right? To, haven't broken ground, right? You haven't done anything. So you need like $1 billion in startup money. And then I think it was 5 years, right? To build everything, because you got to build a plant, right? You got to build a pipeline, and you've got to build all the stuff to do the offloading onto the tankers.
Yeah.
And I think he was building tankers too, but I don't remember the details. Now, You put your money in, you don't see anything for 5 years. And then you get ridiculous dividends. So, I mean, if you got the money to play that game, that's a great game. But like the amount of money required for this infrastructure is absurd. And if you're off on that 5 years, that can have a big negative impact on your business. Right? And if things change, like this wouldn't happen, but like liquid natural gas goes through the floor, all your projections are wrong. Your investors are burning more money. You gotta find more investors, right? Like people don't realize, and like the other thing people don't realize. So almost all electronics companies make less than 5% profit on their stuff, usually 1%, and they literally make it up in volume. That's how it's done, except for Apple. Apple makes 30% on every product, and they will not sell a product unless they make 30%. Their markup is 30%. Like it's unbelievable. And everybody's like, oh, all these oil companies are greedy. Oil companies make between 5 and 7% on average. Some of them make as low as 3, some of them make as high as 10. Oh, my flag fell. No. People don't realize, like, who's greedy? The oil company? It provides something that you need and can't do without, or the company that provides electronic consumer products at a ridiculously inflated rate that you don't need and can get cheaper from other sources.
Yeah.
Let me know. Like when you figure it out, who's greedy, let me know. Hint, I've already got it figured out, but whatever. Like you can do you do you, right? Like you do you. And that's the problem. Like people they don't understand these things. And I'm not saying they should, but like they try to project onto the world the way they think the world works in this flat way. And it's like, no, dude, you're living in comfort. And so you see the world is flat because your world is flat. And you have no idea that Apple is the greediest company for the past like 200 years or something. It's been 200 years since we had a company as greedy as Apple. They're not a great company. I mean, they're just very greedy. And a 30% profit margin is insane. Historically, it's not super high, but like for the past 150 years, it's pretty high. So, and they're huge, right? They're the largest by market cap or something, I think. Like they're enormous.
I know it's like back when in my teens when I worked at Staples, and I don't know if they still pull this or anything like that, but so they used to do this thing where they had a store price and then they had an online price and they had price matching. If you could show the price and everything, a lot of times when they would have stuff like this would be kind of like common things like Cat 4 cables or something like that, and so they would, or just like Logitech items or just little like basic stuff and everything, but they would be marked down by like $20 online, and then they would be marked up in store. But you could go, and if you had like the price gun, you could actually see what the cost of manufacturing was for a particular thing. So you could there was it was like a 25-foot Cat 4 cable at the time was like $25 or something like that to get one of those. And the production cost was something like 15 or 20 cents. And it's just, you see that, it's like, oh my goodness. So they would go and they'd play this thing where it's like, well, okay, yeah, sorry, we got it wrong. We were charging $25, but it's $18 online or whatever. It's like, okay, you got us. Well, or not even you got it. It's just like, oh well, wow, we'll have to tell somebody about that. And then you find out like, oh, it only cost them like 20 cents to make that anyway. So now most of the other stuff didn't have that kind of markup, but it was kind of funny to see like how they made it back up a little bit. Some of those things were absolutely insane.
There's a video online. I've probably talked about it before. There's a video online where the guy used to work at Dell in the customer service, and they have the same thing on their system where you could see the cost of manufacture and the cost people were paying. And one day it was ink, and ink costs like 4 cents or something stupid.
Yeah,
and they charge $40.
Oh yeah.
It's like, what is happening? And he was like, this is like a huge markup of what's going on, and I don't understand. And yeah, but also the business has to survive, and usually businesses only have 1 or 2 profit products, and everything else they make a slim margin on.
True.
So they make it all back on those products, And also, they usually do actually give you the cost of manufacture, but not the cost of shipping and putting it on the shelf and all that other stuff. Because the way they do accounting. And so if you don't understand the way they do accounting, because accounting, we can talk about gap accounting rules and how well they're followed. But everybody's gap accounting rules are a little different too. And so it matters how you account for these things, because cost of manufacture, what do you mean? Like, is that the cost you're buying it for? Because that's only the beginning of the costs. Because you've got to get it delivered, possibly shipped. Like, it depends how they do their accounting, and then you've got to get it out to your stores or your warehouses or both. And that's all extra money that is not typically. It might be listed, but it's typically not listed. And then you look at something like Amazon, and Amazon ran into a big problem, right? I mean, I kind of knew this, but Amazon was taking advantage of cheap shipping from the retail sector. But as they put more and more retail sector out of business, which they actually didn't do, but that's a complicated story that no one's going to understand, their shipping costs went up because they were using the margin in the extra shipping capacity for the retailers to get cheap shipping costs.
That makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And then as the retailers also did online shipping, right, because a lot of them do that, it changed shipping costs for everybody across the marketplace. And people don't realize everything's connected, man. You can't change one piece. Like, that doesn't work. So yeah, people get confused by that.
It's complex, not complicated, you know.
Right.
And that all explains why the little display tray that I purchased got completely without a box or anything like that, just thrown on the porch the other day. It's just kind of like, not like chucked, but just it's just like they're flat on the it's just kind of like little foldable. It was actually in the picture that I shared for the thing I've got coming up. But I got these, and they're kind of like, they're pleather, I guess, and they have little buttons, and you fold it up, and then it becomes a tray. But it's just flat, like in the manufacturer, like little like plastic seal. It's just like, just on the porch, which is weird because they put the other packages in the actual like place where they should have, like by a door. And then they're just like, let me just frisbee this one up here as well. It's just like, shout out to the shipping services now. Of course, not in an Amazon van anymore, but in a rental van. So that tends to be how they're doing it now.
Oh yeah, the number of people that use rental vans. And I knew a guy a million years ago, and he would rent a van for the night and then run long haul shipping for UPS. And I'm sorry, for the post office, for the USPS. And like, he'd drive 12 hours or something stupid. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, no, that's how I make the money to run the mechanic shop. And I'm like, you're not making money running the mechanic shop? And, of course he wasn't. Like, I was getting all my mechanic work for free from him. He's a nice guy. He's a super nice guy. And he had a towing service too.
Oh, nice.
So he just had 3 jobs, and that's how he made ends meet.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Man. It's like, a friend of mine is back in California. He's a courier for a medical company. So like every time there's like a surgery at a hospital or something like that, they need trays of sterilized equipment and sometimes implants and things like that. And so this place goes and they sterilize the equipment, and then they repackage it, and then they deliver it to different stuff. And what like I didn't realize before is that a lot of hospitals use equipment that was also used at another hospital, and then before that was used at another hospital. And that they use a service where it's like, okay, some of these tools, even like scalpels and stuff like that, are, different things. And the trays on which these things are delivered are picked up, ideally without blood on them, but not always. And they're picked up and then taken back to a facility where they're processed and sterilized, and then reset up with all of the appropriate items, and then coordinated back to another location. And so they don't always have the stuff in-house. And so my friend works for a company that he just drives for anywhere between 8 and 12 hours a day all over California, just delivering like scalpels and implants and stuff like that. And it's like the company stays in business just by doing that. And
Wow.
yeah, it's not a huge company, but they deliver to like a large amount of very big hospitals in the area. It's like, well, I never would have thought that they outsourced that. You know, kind of a dangerous
No,
thing to outsource. I'm glad that the company is actually kind of reliable. But
yeah, it's weird the way things work. Yeah, I had to go to the I had to take somebody to the hospital this week, and I was shocked. It was awesome. Like, for real awesome. I was like, "Oh my god." Like, I was allowed to hang out in the rooms,
oh wow,
right? Oh yeah, right up until OR, and they take you like to the elevator and hit the button for you and stuff. It's
wow,
whacked. I was like, "This is fantastic. This is better than hotel service." And yeah, they were super nice, and like they had this super computer system that did all the updates. You know, your patient is here, patient is there, right? Get calls from the doctor. I'm like, this is nuts. This is way better than any service I ever got in Boston. Like, I'm not leaving this place ever. This is phenomenal. Oh yeah, it was a great experience. Jesse Blaney, how can we restore the virtue and charity of proper hospitality? Well, first we need to know that exists. I mean, when you get guys saying we don't know how to interact online, we do. Like, I don't even know what do you say? Why are you like this? Like, that's my question. Why are you like this? We know lots of things that you don't know, and you're lazy and don't do your freaking research. Like, or you know this. Like, why are you in a space if you're not going to do some research and figure out? No, we know how these things work. We know what proper hospitality is. I think way before we get to this, though, Jesse, I think the fundamental problem is we need to understand that we have systems for this. There is etiquette. There is politeness. Like, we already have this worked out. Those things exapt, to use fancy Vervaeke terminology, very nicely to online spaces. And they're not optional. They've been worked out over thousands of years. And they work. And what else works is nothing. Like, we've pared it down to the thing that works. I'm sorry. People don't like that. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you should just be polite, you know? Yeah, it's harder and it's different, but if we could be polite, then we could open the space for hospitality. And then we can point back up. I mean, we should be pointing up, and in a flat world, you're kind of screwed. You need to re-enchant the world. You know,
and
that
definitely through exemplification for sure. I mean, like people
right.
recognize this, and like when
Yeah.
you have a bunch of guys that they're dressing super shabbily and everything like that, they're not conducting themselves, and then a guy shows up that is maybe not even necessarily like in a suit, but he's taking care of himself and he presents himself properly and everything. Like there is, sometimes it comes up in a little bit of jealousy, but sometimes it's kind of like, what I described, like the holy envy type of thing, where it's like,
Yeah.
it's this kind of desire to mimic of like, oh, that's an option. Like, oh, this guy.
Right.
And there's
Right.
some people that are capitalizing on this. Like I'm sort of vaguely aware of there's a guy that runs like a little thing. He sells like wallets and watches and stuff like that. But I remember like this guy is very popular among young men. It's called like the Gentleman's Gazette. And he's just like, oh, this is how you tie a tie. This is how you match, shoes with the suit and this type of thing. And he just kind of like does these little things. And I was like, I found out that this guy existed. I was like, there's someone that's kind of showing up, and he's just like, oh, look, like I'm always in a suit. He's not some kind of like, guru guy. He's just like, oh yeah, this is how you pick out cufflinks, or this is like how you, like
Yep.
maintain your watch,
Yep.
or whatever. Just like basic life skills that unfortunately a lot of people missed, and like, understandably, like there's those types of things aren't being.
Well, we made people comfortable.
Yeah.
We didn't want to make them uncomfortable by making them dress up on Easter. We want to make them. I didn't have that problem. I went to a freaking Catholic private junior high and high school.
Yeah.
And we had to dress in a suit and tie every day for school. Period. Like, period. They'd throw you out if you didn't have a tie. Like, for real. And I got to tell you, dress shoes, not comfortable. Not comfortable.
Yeah, I wear dress cowboy boots basically everywhere, and fashion comes at a cost. It does.
Right. And like suits and ties and jackets, very restricting. Not a fan. Not a huge fan. You know, and years ago, like I still had all that stuff. I mean, I still have some of it, right? It probably doesn't fit because I'm old and fat, but not recommended. Don't get old or fat, by the way. Cannot recommend. But like I would go to interviews like that, and then I'd have to take the jacket off and no tie and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, this is not good. Like, well, why is this way? I mean, it's on the East Coast. Like the West Coast had been like that for years. You know, the flip flops and shorts bullshit that they did in California in the 80s, like whatever. But like it infected the East Coast, and then it was all the way down, right? And yeah, if you're not faced with the prospect of discomfort, right, in order to show that you're serious about the engagement, about the relationship, to take the relationship seriously, then you end up in a world of chaos because you can't discern somebody who's serious from somebody who's not. And that means you can't discern a good person from a bad person. And then you're flinging demons all over the place because you're making everybody comfortable. And in a comfortable space or a safe space, demons like that. Like they like honey. Like they're cool. They want to be comfortable. Plus, there's things to eat there. Like you dumbass. Like, no, like get out of there. Don't do that. Be responsible. Why are you doing this? It makes no sense. Like I'm just, you're just creating more chaos in the world. Like I prefer you not. Like we have enough. Like we don't need more.
I have an insight on that, but before I do, I was thinking of the hospital thing and hospitality and kind of like the laxness, also of that you have people who are escorting you places, but that's also a type of protection of the facility as well because you have someone
Right.
attending you, and so it's like yeah, they're providing a service, but also they got their eyes on you, you know, and it's just like and that's necessary, especially in a
Right.
hospital where people are vulnerable. And I remember there was one time a friend of mine had just gone through a surgery, and the surgery was in a big hospital in Northern Hollywood. And so I had, or like, you know, kind of around that area. And I went and I knew that it was like, okay, there's an area called Echo Park that has an amazing pizza place called Two Boots. And it's a Louisiana style pizza place. So they do it on flat cornbread crust with Cajun spicy sauce. And then all of the pizzas are named after like movie characters. And it's absolutely amazing. And it's connected to a concert hall where they'll have like rock concerts or any kind of concert really. But it's actually they share a wall. So if you're inside at the concert, the people who are there can go to the bar and ask for a pizza, and the pizza joint that's connected to it can actually go and deliver over there. And so it was kind of a cool setup, but I knew I was like, oh, that's only like 10 minutes away. And the pizza was amazing because you could get your, you know, crawfish and, you know, sharp cheddar pizza or whatever. And it's weird, but it worked. And I was like, oh, let me bring some of that stuff and some garlic nuts and all these things to my friend who, cause I know that she'll be able to eat this stuff. And she's been recovering in the place, you know, she's there with her husband and all of us kind of work together and everything. So I'll invite a couple of the work friends and we'll go. But then I reflected on it later because I let everybody in and I had never been in this hospital, but I knew vaguely how to get to where she was going because I know my way around buildings pretty well, even if I haven't been there. So I lead everybody in there and they're like, oh, is security going to stop us or anything? I was like, no, we're just going to like blow past them. And like, I didn't really care much for authority in these days. But I reflected later that I was like, well, you know, we're just going to be nice to them. Like, it wasn't like a, you know, FU security. Right. It was like, well, you know, just be nice and just walk through like we own the place and like it won't be a problem. And it wasn't a problem at all. And I greeted the security guard on the way in and they didn't stop anything. They were just hanging out. And I reflected, I was like, here was 3 military age males wearing all black as we did. Walking in with tall brown paper bags that were rolled up. And we walked straight into a hospital and found our way to the 6th floor and then walked up to the secretaries and the nurses and said, excuse me, is the room that I'm looking for, you know, over here? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely. Feel free to go right ahead. And I was like, and then we did. And we hung out there and we didn't need to check in. No one asked our names or anything like that. And they left us alone.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, that's amazing, you know. And then there was a time when I went to visit a friend in Colorado after I moved to Pennsylvania, and I had a layover in the Philadelphia airport, but it was like a 20-minute layover, and I had to get from the polar opposite side of the airport to the other one to get onto my next flight. And I made it on time, but once again, all black, olive drab backpack, sprinting through an airport. Nobody stopped me. And I was like, wow. It was like dead sprint through the entire thing. And I realized I was like, I'm probably going to get stopped for this, but if I run fast enough, I might be able to make up for the lost time. And yeah, and no one caused any sort of ruckus. And I was like, yeah, that could have been bad if it was bad. Like, I don't, like, that's a tautology thing, but really, like, you know, they didn't know. No one stopped to ask.
Yeah,
It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, people don't realize. Yeah, sure, they're, you know, opening elevators for you and someone's at the bottom when you get out and all that stuff, but they're protecting the other patients. They're not just being nice to you, because you can't do one without doing the other.
Yeah.
And we live in such flat worlds, we think like, well, companies sell stuff because they make money. It's like most companies do not sell stuff because they make money, ever. Like, sorry, that's just not the way the world is. But we have this flat world vision, and it's like, whoa, what's going on? And we don't know, but we think we do. We've been told we can, and usually you can't. You can't understand the financial dynamics of how a liquid natural gas investment unfolds over 5 years. You're a muppet. Like, come on. Like, you don't understand that. And if you do, there's a bunch of other stuff you don't understand instead, because it's all trade-offs. Somebody on his Twitter handle is actually pervert, which I think is hysterical. His name is Han Shu, I believe, but he got thrown off of BOM. It's very funny. But he posted, I think it was today, like, what the hell's wrong with Vervaeke, and why is he so smart? He doesn't understand these sort of basic concepts from religion. And I'm like, well, look, man, you got one brain and you can fill it with propositions, or you can fill it with, religious symbolism or something, right? Like, or poetics. Like, that's how I would frame it. And you can't do both. So what are you going to do? Like, if you made the mistake already of filling it with propositions, then you're going to come up with weird terms like primordial presupposition, which, quite honestly, like, that's freaking hysterical, because I know exactly what that means, and that's just a stupid way of saying something much more simple and basic and understandable, but also hysterical that you would choose that manipulation of the language to say starting axiom,
Right.
when what you're really referring to is the concept of creation, but you don't have the concept in your head for whatever stupid reason. So you make up primordial presupposition as your phrase. Like, that's just funny, man. Like, what's wrong with your brain? Like, I don't. What
I
did
might
you
still
do?
use that word for fun.
I mean, yeah. I mean, but the funny part is, like, you could swap it out. Like,
Right.
this is what's hysterical. No one ever does the trick, right? But like, you could swap it out. You could just go into like any religious text and swap out creation with primordial presupposition, and it will still work.
Yeah.
And we get enchanted by that, because it's a word combination we haven't heard before. To Ixnan's excellent point, right? Word games are fun. Yeah, they can be. I mean, look, I love word games. I can play word games all day with anybody. Back in the early internet days, there was somebody. I love alliteration. Like, alliteration's my thing, and I used to be really, really, really good at it for whatever reason. And we used to go back and forth on just speaking in pure alliteration, like actually communicating with only alliterative sentences, maybe with one or two exceptions like a and the, but like, for real, I mean, it was we'd go for hours, right? And half of it was silly, because it's hard to make any substantive statements that are purely alliterative. But occasionally you can, but like, yeah, we'd just be talking in alliteration. And eventually she'd change your name to Dilly Dolly Dancer. And I was just like, oh yeah, talk about enchanting. Like, you want to enchant Mark? Use alliteration. You've got him. Bang. It's just like, yes, I'm all in. Yeah, I love alliteration. It's so much fun. It's hard too. Like being purely alliterative like that is really difficult. But I was really good when I was fast as hell. I was much faster than I am now. Don't get old. Don't get old. Don't get old or fat. Like they're both bad. And don't do them both at the same time because that's just extra bad. Yeah, no, I mean it was so much fun. I had so much fun with it. I mean, it was a real blast just to engage with alliteration at that level. And when you're young, and you're quick and you've got a reasonably good vocabulary, you can make a lot of progress.
And that's kind of like the best games really do push you like right to the limit,
Right. Well, in open-ended games like that, nobody talks about open-ended games. We're not just not. I love Peterson. I love Vervaeke, and we're not ready to talk about games and play. We're really not. Like they're touching on it, and I'm like, you guys don't understand. There's a lot more there. Like we could go on for months, continuously about this subject because you guys haven't scratched the surface. You're just pointing at it, but that's where all the interesting stuff is too. And that's probably why they can't touch it. They don't have a framework that can deal with play. And, the big rat has to let the little rat win 20% of the time or whatever it is, right? It's like, that's not how that works, but okay. Right? Because that's an oversimplification of what's actually happening in the play sequence, right? Because the little rat can't win too often in a row. Oops. Like, there's bunch of dimensional variables to that equation that they don't talk about. They probably don't know about them. They probably read a paper where somebody rolled up all the numbers. And this is one of the great crimes of science is they use averages everywhere, and averages are not appropriate everywhere. There's more information in the margin. Taleb talks about this. Read all his books. Taleb talks about there's way more information in the margins in certain circumstances than there is in the middle, in the average. And it matters. It matters a lot to how you understand the world. And yeah, not even close to being ready to have that discussion yet for whatever silly reason.
Yeah, I remember you were kind of talking about there's only so much time you can actually devote to just stuffing things into your mind, and it's important to kind of curate that. And I reminded me of something that I think on an old stream you and Elizabeth were talking about. That there's so many people that they're terrified of even like saying hi to a woman because they just spent too much time learning about space. And it's just like, oh yeah, all the space facts just completely took all those slots,
Yep.
And it's just like, oh, it's just. I was thinking of like this is something that a while back I used to kind of mess around with like modding games and stuff, and like you have to have like a load order for those things, and like the most kind of data dependent stuff has to be loaded first. Yep. And it's like, okay, well, if you could have everything there as it should be, but if the hierarchy for the load order isn't properly placed, then it's not going to run correctly, and a lot of stuff is going to be incompatible.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, if you're starting with this thing, like with the texture pack or something, and then there's all these other like super integral things that are way larger, and you did that last, it's like, no, it's not going to work at all.
Right. Yeah, people don't understand the complexity of the world, and because everyone's gotten a flat world version. And then what they've done is they filled their brain with a bunch of flat world versions of the world where they think they understand businesses are there for profit, even though, there's probably more nonprofits than there are for-profit businesses in the United States, for example, right? Or nonprofits and charities or something. And so that can't be true, right? It just can't be true. And then all the businesses that go out of business, I'm like, well, then they're doing a terrible job, aren't they? Why are you worried about this, right? And then on and on and on. Like it's endless. And so because we filled everything with flat worlds. And what is that? That's comfort. Oh, you can know this. Oh, you can understand this. Oh, you can do this. Right? That's people being comforting instead of saying, no, finance is hard and you don't want to go anywhere near it because you want to focus on this thing instead. and nobody wants to set the boundaries for people,
Mm.
right? They want to coddle them and say, yeah, you can do this. It's like, well, what if you can't? There's lots of stuff you can't do. I will never be able to draw. It's never going to happen. Like, I just don't have the innate skill and the control over the fine motor control at that thing. I have fine motor control for other things, just not for drawing, for whatever freaky reason. Like, I don't know. There could be 1,000 variables involved in that equation. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Okay, I can't do that. I want to do that. I can't do that. I want to play guitar. I can't. Okay. Like, why is this a big deal? But everyone's like, no, scream at the sky. It's like, no, bro, it's okay. And now we're skeptical of experts, and like, fair enough. We let a bunch of incompetent people call themselves experts, and we didn't hold them to standards because we were comforting them, right? Yeah. And now, yeah, we don't know who to trust and who not to trust. Yeah, agreed. But we got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, you got to look out in the world and like figure out, I don't know, this person I can listen to and this person I can't. And that's why I like the commentary videos, right? Because hopefully with my commentary videos, I'm giving people a sense for, here's why you can listen to this person and here's why you can't listen to this other person, right? Although it's hard to find people you can listen to because, my God, there's so many people online spewing garbage, and we're permitting it, right? It's very comfortable to start a YouTube channel and to spew your garbage all over the world and flood it with your nonsense and make up blue church and goofy things that can't help anybody ever, no matter what, true or not helpful.
Mm.
And we're stuck in that milieu. We're trapped there for whatever reason.
So that's something that you kind of, it is, as I was driving, I heard you say it, it definitely struck me. And I'm glad you kind of mentioned that, this sort of thing of like being modest about when you're engaging with truth. And there's so many times where a lot of people can't handle certain things, like certain information is just not good for them. And that is a flattening of assuming like, oh, everyone can take this. And there's some stuff where you would think like, oh yeah, this, and you know, there's going to be collateral damage, like you do anything, and like you can't perfectly, but there's, you know, trade-offs to everything. Yep. And this is something that I've kind of noticed with myself, where like I've been more docile lately, but there's been some stuff where I've experienced, you know, people go and they talk about some horrific thing that happened to somebody else, like not even to themselves, which is it's one thing if it's like, oh gosh, this horrible thing happened and like I need to be comforted because I have been completely, you know, like destroyed in this some way, like just yesterday or something like that. But it's another thing if it's like 10 years ago, this horrific tragedy happened to somebody. And then, and this happens to me a lot, like where I'll get kind of scandalized by stuff that should be good, but I realize like, oh, I actually have sort of like an incapacity in this area, at least for right now, that someone will go and they'll tell a story of a person being very forgiving and reconciling even with somebody who did like a horrific crime, like to their family or something like that, just unbelievable damage. And then you'll find out like, oh yeah, this person's family got aggrieved in some way, and then they wound up reconciling in some like extremely over the top way with the person who perpetrated it. And it's like, I'll hear that, and you know, like it's been better recently and everything, but back, you know, when I would get kind of just like caught off guard by this stuff, it would be this thing where it's just like, well, that person had something happen to them that like any person would probably seek revenge instantly for that. And like I would get this sort of feeling of like, oh, I'm now super conflicted and scandalized because that person responded peacefully to something happened to them, and like I don't want that to have been the case, and like I don't want to usurp the fact that they did that, but also like, you know, in a sense, you know, I can perceive like, oh, justice wasn't done in that scenario. And it's like that is also kind of like a fault in myself. But I realized like, oh, that, you know, people going and just saying, oh, isn't that interesting that somebody, you know, was totally fine with some horrific thing happening to them. And it's like, yeah, that person, sure, like that person is an extremely forgiving person. And like that's a great quality, but also I'm not prepared to be hearing about some sort of thing like that. Like, oh, you know, this person, you know, hypothetically, I'll use like a toned down example, but it's like, oh, this person blew up your town and then you adopted them as your son. And it's just like, okay, you know, like I want to blow up their town. Like, you just told me this. You told me the story in 5 minutes, and now I'm all riled up because you finished it. You know, it's also that thing where like, oh, you built the pier, and now everybody's standing on it, and then you knock the thing down. That people can do that to themselves. That it's like, oh, let me
Right.
build this entire structure of here's why this person might have otherwise wanted revenge. And then now I'm
Right.
standing on it. It's like, yeah, they absolutely should have gotten it, and that's horrific. And if that happened to me, I would immediately be so upset. And then they're like, oh yeah, and then they were like super forgiving and everything. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, I'll talk about something else. And it's like, no, you built me up for this other thing, and maybe you knocked it down, but now I'm floating off the sea on this thing that you built for me, you know. And it's like
Right.
that. It's true, and it's, you know, and maybe it's even like the people involved are good, but
Right.
I wasn't ready for that, you know, like, not by a long shot.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff that like you just shouldn't know. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, I remember there's one woman that I met online, and you know, kind of, you know, she was pretty interested in me, but I was just sort of exploring. I just wanted friends, like, and I wasn't looking for anything
Yeah.
else. And she was telling me the story about how, like, oh yeah, my mother was a drunk, and you know, divorced my father, whatever. I forget the full story there. So my stepfather, you know, one day when I was 8, went out in the yard and like knocked me out. And I was like, what? Like, you're a little girl of 8 and this guy knocks you out? You know, and I'm like, where does he live?
Right.
Because I'm like, I'm gonna take care of this myself right now. You know, it's like, all right, we're done here. I know enough now. I don't, and there was much worse stuff, but
Oh
like
yeah.
that story in particular, is like, I don't know, he died of stomach cancer, and I was like, oh, that's too bad, because I'm pretty sure I could have prolonged his suffering considerably, and
Yeah.
that sounds like the right thing to me. Like, I don't even, yeah, it was horrific, and I was like, but now I have that story in my head, and I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
god, people are like this.
Yeah.
You
And,
know,
and
and her
that's
mother didn't protect her because her mother
right.
was drunk and lonely and wanted a guy, like any guy, right? I was just like, what is going on? Like, what kind of world do I live in? You
Yeah.
know? And it's like, some of the stuff out there is horrible. And unfortunately, for whatever stupid reason, people tend to tell me pretty deep, dark secrets pretty easily. And I'm very unhappy about this superpower. I'm like, can I trade this in for something else, please? Or maybe trade it in for nothing. That would be better. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like this. Yeah, I mean, the stories I've heard from people, I'm just
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh my god, like, wow. And I think people don't hear that, and so they have a very skewed version of reality. Like, you don't realize how varied people are in their tolerances, in their skill sets, in their knowledge, in you know, how they can move their body. I know a ton of people, like a ton, who are just physically clumsy, and they just can't work at a store of any kind because they drop stuff and it breaks all the time. Like, it's just who they are. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's nothing physically wrong with them. They just drop stuff and it breaks. Like, it can't be fixed. And like, they just need jobs that are desk jobs with a keyboard or something, you know, like, and that's the thing. Nobody wants to build a complex world that has a place for people. They want to put people in the place they like. And it's like, no, 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 no. No, 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 no. You got to put people in the place where they can be most effective and feel the most useful, maybe against their will. Like, you know, maybe you're really good at something that you don't like to do, but like, it's good for you to do that thing. I mean, I'm not saying that's everybody, but there are people like that just need to be forced to do a job that they don't particularly like, but they're particularly good at, because ultimately that will give them more life satisfaction than trying to do a job they're not good at.
Yeah.
And it may only be good at one thing. I've met people like that. There's thousands of them in the world. Thousands. This is not an unusual phenomena, you know? And there are next level people. Like, there are people that have a high degree of generalized competence. You can give them any job and they'll do a really good job at it automatically first time. There are those people. It's just that's less than 1% of the population. And I'm sorry. And then you go online and the problem is you can find more of those online than you can in your neighborhood, obviously. And then you oversample because you can't sample the world correctly. It's way too big. And then you don't understand anything. And then you get confused and upset. And then you double down on your little private environment and you get in your comfort, safe zone space thing. And, and then that blows up because of course it does.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I was kind of, you said the whole, it's a silly thing, but it's true. The whole like, demons like honey type of thing, where it's like if you build it, they will come a lot of times. And these, that happens on multiple levels. And there's that example with, like the person that you described, where it's just like, oh, here's an environment where there was a safe space that was opened. And then, demon manifested, maybe already in someone who created a safe space for themselves, and then that person who's the host, patient zero, shows up, and then now it's propagating across time, and everything just kind of jumping, and doing like a bar crawl on all these different people, and it's like, that tends to be how it goes.
Yeah, and people don't get that because they want the world to be this good place with misguided people. And the irony is they're not even willing to guide them. I'm like, well, if you think they're misguided or misunderstood, why aren't you here rehabilitating them? Because you're not even doing that. So you don't believe that. Like you're not willing to act it out. You don't believe it. It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's like you're not a good person. Sorry. Like there's a set of good people and you're not part of that set. It's not hard. Sorry.
Yeah, and there's lower forms of participation too. Like, it's like if you can't do it, then like refer people to someone, like try to just do anything, or at least give the signals of like, okay, like I'm not the one for this,
But don't set up a space if you don't have those people in place.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Like don't even go there. Like, why are you going there? What are you doing? Like what, because it's easy and cheap to set spaces up, and that lowering the bar of entry, the barrier to entry, was a bad idea. Like the barrier to entry was a good thing. Like you want people who are motivated, capable, and competent, who will do the work so that when the space is built, they will do the work. Like otherwise you get people building spaces all over the place and just coming up with YouTube channels and spewing their nonsense garbage all over YouTube. And then they complain that they're censored. And it's like, no, you're not censored, dickhead. There's just too many YouTube channels. Like if there were 10 YouTube channels and you were 11, you'd have all the subscribers you could handle, even if you're spewing garbage. That's not a function of the algorithm. That's like a law of scale. Like when things reach a certain scale, you need different filters. And if you don't put filters in place, filters are a form of censorship. If you don't put filters in place, everything's worse. Like it's not better. I mean, I had to tell all these clowns, on this call this morning, like, you guys think decentralization of currency is a good thing, but actually you're relying on a larger and longer supply chain. And that supply chain can be taken over. And it has been. And you're just like pretending like it's never happened and it's not an issue. And then you're also worried about the Hezbollah explosions. And I'm like, those are the same thing. I don't know what to tell you. Like, the more technology you have, the longer your supply chain has to be necessarily. And I don't know why you think decentralization is good, because it can't be. Like, it has to have this huge cost. And it's not solving the problem you think it's solving. You can't trade things in a decentralized manner. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
You feeling safe? Feeling comfortable?
No. Don't be comfortable with silence.
Don't be comfortable in silence. Yeah. Silence is a signal.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I remembered I listened to that. I always, even though I know like a lot of the stuff that he presents is very materialistic and everything, but I still find him very entertaining, and some of the stuff he says is very useful. But that FBI hostage negotiator, Chris Voss, very entertaining guy. I remember, like there was a time that he was on Jocko Willing's podcast, and they were talking about like being comfortable with silence in a negotiation, and then they go and like they both stop. And they're just like staring at each other. It was pretty great.
Funny.
But I was thinking about, now I'm not sure necessarily if this ties in, but this is just something funny that I kind of picked up related to that guy. He had done a book for real estate agents, and most of it is like recapitulation of the stuff he already had in his other book. But some of the stuff is pretty useful, and just kind of he's actually trying to sort of still using materialistic terms, but also kind of, like I don't know what's going on in his head or anything, how he is, but like you also have this thing where Mathieu Pajot is using certain terminology, but that's also not the terminology he would use in a private conversation,
right?
But so Chris Voss uses this language, and he co-writes it with another guy, and he so he's very much kind of he's presenting things to these real estate agents, and I noticed it's like, oh, so much of the stuff is the stuff that like we've been talking about here, and that he's trying to re-enchant the people. Like he's trying to actually change. They have a flat perspective, and you can actually, he doesn't use the words, and he uses very like kind of common parlance and everything. Like there's a little itch of like, oh, like he could have used this other word or whatever, but he's getting the point across. And at the end of it, it really is like he's trying to re-enchant the real estate market, essentially. And that there's these people who are like, they're getting locked into procedures that actually don't work, and that he tries to, he goes and he says stuff throughout the thing like, oh, it's scientifically proven or whatever, and he uses these terms, and it's like I realize, okay, yeah, that's not actually useful, but also these people want to hear that. Then you can actually and you can hear him in the book using the very tactics and stuff to enchant people on the people he's trying to teach the stuff. And it's like, I wonder how many people pick that up, because like I know I was familiar with some of the stuff that this guy had done before, and he's really good, and I've used some of it. But I was thinking of he has this strategy where he puts stuff together, but he always gets a free upgrade at hotels every time, unless he already has the best room in the place. Like that's the only time he doesn't get it, but he still tries, like just to kind of see and everything. But he's genuinely trying to be nice to people. Like he's trying to also give them kind of a fun time and everything. Like, okay, it's going to be an experience when you deal with me, not like, oh, let me see how I can fleece these people or whatever. But I was so entertained by it's kind of mentioned how he does it. So he goes and he introduces himself with a smile, and he says, hi, I'm Chris. And then he says, and I'm getting ready to ruin your whole day. Like he starts off with just like, this is major anchor. And then he goes, and then he starts doing that accusation audit thing, which I kind of told you about, that I want to kind of prepare a little bit of stuff, not so I can do it, but so I can kind of be prepared mentally. And he goes and he starts saying, you're going to think that I'm the greediest guest you've ever had. You're going to think, oh, this guy said he was going to ruin my day. He ruined my whole week, all these things. And just kind of, he goes off until the person looks like kind of horrified. And then he's like, all right, I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to think all these things. Let me know when you're ready. And then he just sits there in silence until they start until they're like, oh, they invite the horrific thing that's going to happen. And then he says, how much trouble would you get if I asked? So he's not even asking the actual question. He says, how much trouble would you get in if I asked you for a free upgrade on my hotel room? Every single time they've been set with this expectation of like, oh, it's going to be a living nightmare. This guy's just said he's basically like Satan walking through the door, and then it's just like, oh, he just wants a free upgrade. Like, yeah, absolutely, I can do that, and then, but he's still nice to them, and he probably tips and everything like that. He probably spends more money than he saved anyway. But it's like, but then that way it's kind of like this experience where he's trying to like, he talks about like, oh, you do the Oprah thing where you pick them up in a limo, but you also send them away in a limo. Because like a lot of times at the talk shows, they send a limo to pick you up, and then you leave in a cab or something as soon as you're done. And it's like, no, like you want the full experience to kind of do that. But it's interesting that he gets people out of their comfort zone, and then that is the place for growth. So like the generative relationship that he builds with them is actually by knocking them out of their comfort zone, not by
Right.
trying to like follow the
Right.
procedure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always the case.
Yeah.
That's why when people are like, "Hey, you're mean," I'm like, "Well, no." But also you're a retard, so I don't care about your opinion. So yeah, there's always a lot of I am always fascinated by the number of people that I actually don't know at all, right? Or have talked to once or twice, who somehow believe that I care anything about their opinion about literally any topic. I'm like, are you serious? You're so self-important that you think that I care what you think about anything? Because I don't. Sorry. I just don't. Your opinion is unimportant to me. Sorry. Your opinion on the best color for a cat is like might as well be anything. Like, yeah, this yeah, like what do what's wrong with your brain? I'm always just I don't know you, bro. Like I don't care about your opinion on anything. Like I don't even know where you get this nonsense from. And they expect, they expect that relationship. And I'm like, I don't know you. That's not happening. We're online. Like, I don't, I didn't even ask you for your damn opinion. Like, why do you think I want it?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a time, and like I know this guy, not super super close, but there was a time when I was like, he was trying to make some sort of, breakdown of some TV series that I had not even watched or anything like that, and he's giving me like the breakdown of it, and then he goes and he starts framing it in, sort of this sort of thing where it's just like, okay, yeah, you're doing it in a frame that is also kind of scandalizing in a sense. And he's like, oh, well, and so I pointed out to him, like, I tried to shut it down. And, like, I had known this guy for a while, but I would talk to him, once every, few months or something like that in mixed company and everything like that. And he was like, well, if you want to get technical, it's like, I'm not getting technical with you. Like, I'm not even having this conversation with you. You're just telling me things, But I don't know. Some people get into it. Like, I knew a guy that was, he went off talking about like the lore of some book series or something like that. He was at it for a while, and I was just there, like just listening, doing something else, and everything like that. And then I gave some feedback after like an hour, and he was like, "Oh, you were still here?" He was talking to himself the whole time. Didn't realize that I was still there. And I was like,
Wow.
"Oh, so I wonder if some of that is this kind of thing of just kind of like using other people as like the what do they call it, rubber ducking."
Yeah, but a lot of people do that. Like a lot of people are like, that person lied to me. And I'm like, no, most likely they lied to themselves and they're using you to justify it.
Yeah.
They're trying to get you in on their lie. They're not lying to you. They don't know you. They don't care about you. They're literally just trying to lie to themselves and using you as a mirror so they feel better about their lie to themselves. And people don't, they cast so much rationality in the world. It's like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And that's part of the comfort and safety problem. Like it's easy to do, but it's usually just not the way the world is. And people get really confused. I don't know why. Actually, I'm always like, why are you confused? Pretty straightforward, actually.
Mhm. Yeah, I think people really should engage the arduous more, And I mean, and
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, it'll happen to you if you don't, anyway.
right.
And even if
It
you do, it'll
happens
still
anyway.
happen to you. Yeah, right. I experienced that explicitly this week, where it's like I was actively engaging the arduous, and I was like, okay, this is good. And then I was getting blindsided constantly for 5 days, and it's like that's what happened to me Monday through Friday was this thing of like, and not trying to overload myself, like actually being careful about
Right.
the cognitive overload
Right.
thing, keeping my load low, and yet so much stuff was happening that I was getting overloaded anyway. Like I was operating maybe at like 30 or 40% a good chunk of the week. Sometimes I was pumping it up to like 60 to 80 at times, but not the entire day. But then there were times when I was like, I didn't have much going on, that like of my own interests, you know, of oh, you know, I'm going
Right.
to work on this project or the stuff I got going on next week, doing the prep for that. That was kind of low impact because I could
Yeah.
spread that out over a long amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then just so much stuff was happening that I needed to address. And I was like, wow, just to be mediocre, like just to keep up with just baseline entropy, I am getting hit so hard. And but some of that was also this kind of thing of a lot of the work that I'm waiting on is I'm waiting on other people. And
Right.
I know that like I like these people, but they're not putting in the same amount of effort. And I also realize like the fact that I'm having to put so much effort this close to the time frame is also a little bit because some people might be a little too comfortable. And like
Yep.
I'll do it. But also, you know, I had plans multiple times this week to drop in on you guys having a conversation, enjoy some sort of entertainment or something like that. And it actually didn't happen at all like throughout the day. Like actually no relaxation time to kind of rest and recuperate happened
No
for the
rest.
entire day. And it's just like, yeah, it's a whole thing. Like I'll still do it, you know, like I got my, you know, my fifth breeze you know, this evening, but it's like, oh my gosh, you know, like how long can it keep on going? So I think things are going to be looking good, but it's like, gosh, you have to put so much additional effort just to catch up.
Right.
And it's like there's the startup cost that you talked about, but then there's also like the catch up costs of like even if you try to scale something or you are depending on somebody else, like you do whatever the thing is, and then it's like, well, I have people who are also working on the team, and then it's like, well, they didn't do the stuff in time, so now like it still has to be done in time. So it's like startup costs all over again sometimes.
Right. Well, it's easy to lose things.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with too much comfort and too much safety is you lose a bunch of stuff while you're being comfortable.
Yeah.
But all right, closing thoughts.
I want to say those were it. Just engage the arduous. Don't get too soft, but temper it. You know, just be modest in the things that you're doing, and you know, don't wear yourself out, but especially don't wear other people out by getting too comfy. That's all
I like it. Yeah, because you're wearing that's coming at a cost to someone else. That comfort and that safety. That's a good point. Yeah. And they may take that out on you later. Like you're in debt to the earlier point. You're in debt. Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, and I think I think look, you need comfort. You need rest, right? You need to feel safe sometimes for a short amount of time. Right? That there's nothing wrong with that. It's required. Like it's a good thing. But also too much comfort is evil. Like actually evil. Too much safety is actually evil. Right? Too much rest is actually evil. Because the world's still moving, whether you're moving or not. And then that's what comfort is. You're not, and you may feel like you're moving, but you're not. Like when you're engaging with somebody making up ridiculous terms like primordial presupposition, it feels like you've learned something or that's something new when it's not. It's just a misuse of the language for no apparent good effect. And it's easy to get fooled by that because it sounds attractive. But don't be fooled by that stuff. And yeah, I'm going on a trip. I'm leaving tomorrow, coming back on Tuesday. I think I'll have at least part 1 of this commentary video out for you guys. I can maybe do more parts, but like you got to let me know because these are a lot. That talk is a lot of work. Like I'm just so, a lot of it's just me stopping to weep because poor John Vervaeke. Anyway, how far we have fallen. But everybody have a good week. I'm glad everybody, showed up for as many people as did. Ixnaan, have a good, true and beautiful trip. Thank you, sir. I shall. It's going to be fun. I'm going to go on a concert. And I'll see you all.